And we've got 2 minutes before we officially start. Again, hopefully most people will be here by then. Okay, we're going to get going. First, let's do a check. Can you guys hear me? Check mark if you can hear me, X if you cannot. That would be weird if you actually put an X in there, because then you'd be able to hear me, kind of. All right, so I got some person that can hear me. Yay, thank you for that. All right. All right, let's get moving. So we are advanced client-side JavaScript. That's COMP2112 in the fall 2022 semester at Georgian College. And it's week 5, but week 4 for you, of our broadcast and recording together. And this week we're going to try and catch up a little bit. Again, we're continuously working to catch up for the stuff that we're doing. So let's start off with our schedule. So we are sitting at week 5. Again, single page application is what we're talking about this day. Things that are due on this, coming up are, we have our assignment 1 up and coming. It's coming up. It's supposed to be this week, but I think I moved it off to the 16th, which is the Thanksgiving week. So this is kind of moved over to here. In-class exercise 4 has been released and is due this Sunday as normal. So that's something that's going on. Last week, what we did was we started talking about using local storage to do CRUD operations. So that's create, read, update, delete, and all those kind of things. We didn't really get far with it, only because we were learning a bunch of little things. I also figured out that you guys don't really know, a lot of you don't know stuff about object-oriented programming, which is totally cool. We'll go over more of that as we go in this course. So hopefully you'll get a sense of what that is, or you've done a little bit of studying on your own. And, you kind of get you've got a handle, I'm hoping, on what that is a little bit more compared to last time. This week, what are we doing? Well, we're going to talk about what a single page application is, how to create a SPA with Ajax local storage and the history API. What are those things? And then more stuff, around our 5-page site that you're going to need for your assignment 1. Actually, what I'm going to do right now is take any questions first, and then get right into making a 5-page site. Then I'll hook back into the single page application, which is a little bit reverse compared to how I normally do it. Okay, so anybody have any questions before we move into, let's make a copy of our previous project and do a 5-page site really quick. We'll talk about the challenges with this thing. All right, if there are no questions, and again, if there are, please stop me. The best way we can make use of this thing so it's better than just being fully online is interaction. So you can always interrupt me if that we've met, so you know who I am. You can always come on the mic and say, hey, Tom, I don't get it, or whatever. Now, we are recording the session, so that's fine, but, or you can send me a message on the chat here in Zoom. All right, so last time what we did was we've had a bunch of folders here, and again, I'm going to skip right into the code right now. Let's do it. And I'm just going to copy and paste this code here. So copy, and I'm going to copy also the node modules files, and that's fine for this time around. It'll take time. Usually node modules, because of the thousands of files that you get, you can see here I've got 2,800 some odd items that we're transferring, and that's perfectly fine. As we transfer these things, you can see that in some sense, it might be faster to do it by yourself, like delete the node modules and then do a yarn install. And then after you've got your yarn install done, it would be about actually faster than this. So we're just going to rename this thing to week 5. That's this week, so we can keep track of what we're doing. We have some other things to do, because whenever we rename stuff, we also have to put things up on GitHub again, and we want to repoint it to a new repository. So again, going up here, we can see that we have a repository for before. We want to make a new one, and that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to say COMP2112 in the fall 2022 semester, and it's week 5. I'm going to make this public, right? Here it is. And now that I've done that, I'm going to get some steering instructions, and I need to change my remote so it doesn't point to the old one, but actually it points to the new one. So that's what I want to do now. So back to our command line. So I'm going to bring up command line for a second. And I'm going to CD space. I'm going to go into our project for this week. This is week 5, which I just copied from week 4, right in there. And when I do that, I'm going to do git remote remove origin. That's the command. Removes the origin remote. And what I want to do again is copy everything from our last 3 lines of code here. So I'll copy these ones. That's the steering instructions that we're getting from our new repository, and then paste it in. And then now it will repoint our repository to the new, or our local files to the new repository. Yay. Okay, so that's been done. And we can refresh to see what that looks like. There it is. And what I want to do now is so VS Code right now for me is looking at week 4. I want to just pull in week 5. There it is. And a couple of things to do whenever we pull in a new repository. So one thing is, let's just reload. Sure. One thing is that in a package.json, it might say week 2 or something else. Let's make sure that that says the proper week this time around. So that'll be week 5 for this one. That's week 5. Also, the repository, we didn't really talk about this, but the repository right now points to the old one. And this usually is made on or created when we create our first repository in the first place. So when we repoint stuff, we didn't do this last time. It's a little bit more niggling detail for you, but you should, kind of change your package.json to reflect, the new repository right now. So that's this package.json thing. tsconfig.json. Some of you got this wrong when I was looking at your labs. And by the way, all of your in-class exercises are marked. Some of you lost marks or got 0 if you did not submit a accessible GitHub link. So if your link was inaccessible, you didn't include me as a collaborator or something like that, that's where you lost your marks. Or if you missed something that I asked you to do, during the in-class exercise. For example, the exercise for ICE 2 required TypeScript. Some people gave me just JavaScript, so there you lost the mark, for something like that. So if there's something that was missing, you would lose a mark. And for the most part, though, most of you got full marks, right? So that's how we do it. If you do, follow along, and this is kind of your practice every week, you're going to get full marks every time. There may be times where you don't, and that's because you missed something. And like I said, that's where you might have lost a mark. But for the most part, you should see your marks up right now. Remember, all these labs or in-class exercises, call them what you want, they're worth 4% of your final grade. So there's 3 that's been done so far, right? So that means that's 12% so far. So please don't take them lightly. This is your practice. This is your participation. This is whatever you want to call it. But it's important that you guys get this done. All right, so yes, we've made our change here, and we always want to check to see if everything's working here compared to what we did last week. So again, I'm going to pull up our integrated terminal here. So we're just going to get right into it, and I'm going to do, and again, for those people who are just joining, what I've done is I've copied our project files from last week to this week, made it week 5, repointed our repository, all those same things that we've done over a couple weeks now. And I'm going to launch Light Server. And what Light Server will do is it will pull up our project files. Control-Shift-J will pull up what it looks like in our console. So here's our console. You can see here what it did was we, on our application in our local storage, what we did is we stored our files here. That's what we've done. We've stored our files. And each of these, strings, they're basically encoded so that they're comma separated. You have your full name, contact number, and an email address. And that's what we did last time. Notice the key is not in numerical order. So not like 0, 1, 2. Why would that be? Why are the key? What do you think the key is not in numerical order? Can anyone give me a guess of why that is? 0, 1, 2. It should be 0, 1, 2, but it's 0, 2, 1. Why? Take a wild guess, guys. No one's willing to guess today. Are you guys awake? Are you guys there this morning? I know you can hear me because Tyler and Sarah say you can. So what about the rest of you guys? What are your thoughts? Why is in local storage, I'm looking at local storage here, and why does local storage show me 021 and 0012? What do you think that is? Wild guess. Come on. Anybody? Okay. How about this? The asynchronous nature of JavaScript. Don't get mad at me, but that's the reason. Truly, what happens is the server is going to take these keys whenever it feels like it, and because we're dealing with local storage, and even though we're doing it in numerical order, the server is going to work with the data that we're sending it in whatever order it feels like. Be aware of this. So when we load stuff, from local storage, again, we're not going to have it in potentially numerical order. We have to deal with this maybe during our time. All right, so that is kind of what we did last time. You can see here that our Light server is running, and in our Light server, what's happening right now is it's pointing to as an example, if you look here, it is giving us some codes. 304 means nothing has changed. 200 means everything is okay. And it gives you 2 URIs. One of them is localhost 3000, and the other one is localhost 3001. There's 2 of them, but basically what it does, it gives you browser sync capability. So it syncs up with the stuff that we're doing online. Again, this is all review from what we've done so far. So, so this is number 1. I made some changes here, and I want to put this up on GitHub because I did change the package.json file. So again, control backtick. I'm going to pull up another terminal. You can do that here on the right-hand side, where you can kind of, add another one. And I'm just going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say updated our package.json file. And push it back up to GitHub. Okay, some people are having difficulty joining. If, by the way, guys, if you know someone in the class that has having difficulty joining this morning, I'm not sure why, but please give them the meeting information if you know them already. I know this is new for some people. So this is the meeting info for our Zoom link. I know there's some people. Okay. Yes, yeah. So it's going to get you to sign in for the first time. And the reason why is so that we can verify who you are. Otherwise, random people come onto Zoom, and so on. And I don't want that because you can pass the link that I've given you to somebody else. Typically, we don't do that, but it's part of our security requirements. Okay, so just you sign in the first time, and once you sign up for Zoom, then you're good to go. Okay, so we've done basically everything that we've talked about last time. Now let's start getting into making a 5-page site. So with a 5-page site, we have our basic index.html, and if you notice, we're going to have no password. So in our 5-page site, we're going to have a main navigation area. So there's our main navigation. And we're also going to have a main content area. Here's our main content, right? Followed by some kind of main footer content, right? And that's kind of how our project is going to look, right? So far our main content is very simple. It's a hello, you know, for you guys. And let's put a horizontal rule in there. Undo a horizontal rule, right? So that way it looks kind of separated very, very quickly. And what I want to do is grab some navigation from or a navigation example from Bootstrap. So instead of us, you know, creating our own main nav HTML and stuff, let's just get it from Bootstrap. So again, I'm going to go up here to Bootstrap. And under Bootstrap, I'm going to go to Docs, and I'm going to scroll down until I see navbar. There's navbar right here. And navbar gives us this example right here. So this is our navbar. Here's where I'm going. So I'm going to give you that. I'll give you that link in the chat. There we go. And what I want to do with this is I want to copy the entire thing and modify it. Now, normally what it gives us is this navbar up here. So if you notice that there is, let's go here. So this thing right here is what we're getting, right? This part. And it looks pretty grayed out. I'd like to make it a dark navbar as opposed to a light navbar. That's what I'm looking at right now. And what I want is for me to grab all of this stuff and modify it so we can use it in our code. So that's kind of where I want to go with that. All right, so in order for me to do that, I'm just going to copy it here. This little copy to clipboard thing. And I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code. And inside of the main nav here, I'm just going to copy that in. All right, so there it is. And it's pretty big. And it'd be nice if this was embedded inside of a header or something like that. So let's undo that. Let's undo that. And we could put it inside of a header. So we can say header, right? And in there, we can copy paste. Okay, so let's put that in there. Now it's inside of a header. Yay, right? Again, all I've done is I've copied this part right here, right? And I copied it right into this. So if I save this, and if I go back to our site here, you can see now that we have this little ugly navbar up here that is kind of this gray color, right? Okay, let's fix this. So at the top, you can see that our navbar is navbar. It says expand large, background light. I want a background dark, right? And I also want to make it so that it's navbar dark, okay? So navbar dark, background dark, save. And when I do that and go back, you'll see that we have a dark navbar now with our links on the left and our what looks like our brand, which is navbar on the left as well. We have a bit of a search bar, completely useless for us. We don't need that. And it'd be nice if we had everything kind of going. So I don't need all of this, right? Like for example, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see that there is a UL inside of an LI dropdown. We don't need the list item dropdown. We're not going to use a dropdown right now. So we can get rid of that. We're also not going to need this disabled link. We can get rid of that. And we definitely don't need the form, which is our search bar. So we can get rid of the form, goodbye form, which leaves us with two. We get a link by itself and the home link. And by the way, Bootstrap. Let's talk about Bootstrap really quickly. ME auto, MB2, MB large 0. All of this means margin end auto, margin bottom 2. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, when it comes to margin bottom, which gives us margin, a set number of pixels, if you will, to the bottom, margin of the UL. Margin bottom large 0. And so you can see that these are controls. These are CSS classes that have been added in, to kind of space out our nav bar a little bit. What I want is, right now, if I press save, if I go back, you can see that those, the search bar is gone. But I want these two links to appear on the right-hand side, and without doing any fancy CSS, all I need to do is margin start auto. So it's going to push everything from the left to the right. And when I do that, you can see now that my links are on the right-hand side and my nav bar is on the left. So right links, nav bar left, and my brand, if you will. Okay, that's pretty good. So I've got my home and I've got this other link, and my home link is active, but the other link is not. And you can see that the home link seems, excuse me, a home link seems to be, I'm just going to draw this out here for you guys, just to make sure that you guys are good. The home link seems to be kind of whiter than the link, the other regular link. And that's because we are on the home link and it has a nav bar active next to it as a class. So if you look here back to this, you can see that this says nav link active, and where the regular link does not. Okay, so let's just get rid of the regular link for now. We'll work with one link at a time, copy it, create our navigation scheme, and then we'll make copies of our page, which is the problem, right, with all this why we're trying to solve this problem today. So nav item, nav link active, and it says our home is what we want to. We don't have an href. Href is our link, the actual hypertext HTML link. Here, we're just going to just put in our index.html. That is our link for index.html. Also here in navbar, let's change navbar so it says COMP2112. There we go. And here again, it'll be the same link, index.html, right? And I would like to put in to use Font Awesome to create a nice little icon here, icon font next to the home link, as we're creating a site that should be responsive to different viewport sizes. So let's go back to here. And remember, Font Awesome, we're using Font Awesome. And for Font Awesome, if I go to icon, right, then you can see here that under the icons, we can have any icon I want. I'm going to press in home. So if I want the home icon. On the left, we need to filter this because we are using free icons. And so we definitely want to only have free icons featured. So none of them that are paid for, obviously, because we're not paying for Font Awesome. And you can see here that we have several different kinds of homes that we can use as icons. I'm going to use the, for today, a house with a chimney. I don't know why. I just feel like a house with a chimney today. It's a little bit colder than normal, 0 degrees outside, a little bit freezing. I think the house with a chimney is fair. So here I'm clicking on this. Once I click with the house with a chimney, you can see that it gives me a bit of code that I'm going to copy. I'm going to click onto it and copy it, and then go back to our VS Code. And just before the home text, that's the text object inside of the anchor anchor element, the A element, right? So here, I'm going to just make a space and press Control V and copy that in there. So that's the FA solid, FA house chimney that I'm using with an I tag, right? And if I go back to our site now, you can see clearly we have a little home here on the right with, a little chimney, right? And I want to make it larger. And to do that, you can say FA-large. So that's the way to do that, save. And again, now you can see that my home is bigger, right? That's a bigger home link, okay? And I want to do that for all of them. So this is kind of the first thing, almost like my prototype for all the rest of them. I want to make 5 pages. So again, we said home, about, that's about you for your bio page. Services, projects, contact, all that stuff. Those are the 5 pages, right? So let's copy this 4 times. So copy. and then paste, 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 right? So we have 4 copies of the same thing. And let's start, configuring. So obviously not all of them are going to be active. So let's get rid of the active link for all the other ones other than the home link, because this is the index.html page for now. That's the first change. Where home about will be the second one. There's about, right? And then projects, services. So projects, services, and contact. Okay, so there's our contact page. And we've changed the link name. Maybe we want to be even nicer. So something like about us, right? Our projects, our services. And I'm saying our, or you can say mine if you want as well. And contact us, contact me, when you're making your portfolio site. So there it is, right? So some words. Clearly, if this is the about us link, then this should be about.html. We don't have an about.html yet, but we will. And the same thing goes with our projects. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Exit. And projects.html will be here, projects, as well as services and contact. All right, so there's that, those links. There we go. So index, about, project, services, and contact. That gives us 5 pages. But the icons are wrong. They're all houses with chimneys, right? We don't need that. So if I go back to the link, you can see here we got all of our links, right, at this point. But you all got houses with chimneys. We need to change these to make them more relatable to the link, whatever the link is. So going back to Font Awesome, about us, maybe an info would be nice to use there. So let's use info for that. And you can see that there are a bunch of things for info. I'd like to probably use, again, question mark is kind of weird. I'm not really into that. And again, you can choose something that's relatable to you. The other thing you can do for your portfolio site is you can certainly use your own icons, making your own icons if you want to go that far. Remember, what I want to see is what you know, right, with your little mini portfolio site. Okay, so here, circle info is what I want to use. I want to grab this link here, and I want to replace the I tag here with that. And I'm just going to go to FA-large. So then again, if I go back to our page, you can see that I've got the info icon there instead of the home icon. Nice and easy, right? And I want to do the same thing for our project, services, and contacts. Okay, so projects, again, kind of a weird thing. You may not find projects, but let's take a look. So if I say projects or a project, there is a diagram, there's a list check of some kind of thing. You can see that there are not that many, right? It's projects and products. Sometimes product might also be a thing to use, right? Or a list, you might say some kind of list of products or projects or whatever you want to call it. And again, you can use any kind of icon that makes sense for you. So a bulleted list is okay. If I go back to projects, for example, you might see this diagram, which is a project diagram. I'm going to use this one just to be different this time around. I've done kind of the same things over and over again. So I'm going to use FA diagram project. There we go. And I'm just going to put that in here. Whereas as our projects, I'm just going to replace the I tag with that one and just put FA large. Save. Okay, services. Let's try that now. So services, if I go service, you can see again, not that great. But if I say something like, I want to almost think about like a map or something like that. If I go map or directions or something like signs posts, maybe for the, kind of different kinds of services that I offer. You can also have other icons here that make sense to you, that speak to you. I'm going to use signposts or signs post. This is the one I'm going to use. So just copy that one. And again, I'm just going to replace this one here with that. And then I'm just going to go FA large. And finally, contact us. Let's do the same thing here with contacts. So contact is this, it's an info card. Sometimes we might use a phone, as an example, if you might have a phone to contact us, or email might be also a good thing nowadays because most of us email or chat or whatever. And so I can maybe use an envelope. I'm going to use this one. And just going to put that in there. So that's kind of a contact. And again, it's FA large. There we go. So we got our 5-page links right now. And if I look back at our pages, it looks like this. Questions so far? How are you doing with this one? And I put this up on GitHub. So you can have my code can be your code in a second, right? So it's going to go here and control. First of all, let's save everything. Control backtick will take us here. And I'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added simple navigation scheme, git push. Very simple. All right, so yes, nice. We've made our 5-page site. We have a bunch of extra spaces. We can kind of shore those up. So we have, this is what our navigation scheme looks like right now. And this is just for our index.html page, clearly, right? Because we've only put it here. And in our main content, the next part is I want to have a main tag, which is semantically correct. And I want to grab our div tag here with our hello, populate that in there. And in our main footer, here's our footer tag. And inside our footer element, we want to put in some kind of, kind of fixed bottom navigation, right? So that the bottom nav stays there regardless of how much content's on the page. Again, Bootstrap can help us with this. So I'm going to go back to Bootstrap, and under navbar, if I go scroll down here and scroll down and scroll down, you're going to get to a point where it gives you an example of a fixed navbar bottom. So here's fixed bottom right here. And this fixed bottom navbar, again, this is in the same link I gave you earlier in the chat, right? But if you scroll down, you'll see this fixed navbar bottom. I want to grab this here, and I'm going to put this in here. There it is. And so it says navbar fixed bottom background light. So this is a light navbar, not a dark navbar. Again, colors, that's on you on how to modify. Again, remember that you can modify the CSS. I don't want to put another link here. So what I'd like to do instead is maybe put an H4 tag. And inside my H4 tag, maybe even an H5, something even smaller. An H5 tag with something like and copy. That's copyright. That'll be copyright 2022. And maybe some, all rights reserved, something like that. And the name of your site. So all rights reserved. This is pretty standard, right? And then the name of your site, which is for us COMP2112, right? And then copyright. And if you wanted to space these out, you put them in different rows, but we're not going to do that right now. Save. And when I go back to our site here, you can see at the bottom, there is a all rights reserved, but it's really hugging the left-hand side here. And the reason for this is because we didn't do anything from, we didn't put it inside of any kind of container. Let's do that. So say div tag with a class of container dash fluid. And if I'm not wrong, and let's grab that and put it in there. And now you can see that, did it work? Is it container fluid? Wow, okay. And that should be, yeah, class container fluid. Class container fluid, why? Why? I always think about why things don't work the way they're supposed to. When they are clearly supposed to work like this, when you have a nav bar that's fixed bottom. Sometimes it's because of the combination of CSS too that we're using, right? So we're using a container fluid with a nav bar that's fixed bottom. I'm wondering if I put the container fluid here, container dash fluid. Did I spell it properly? Yes. Just refresh. Yeah, that should be pushed out a little bit more, which doesn't make me happy. It's on the outside of the nav. outside of the nav. Yeah, that's correct. That's how it should be. I'm just concerned why that is the way it is. It should work. But I wonder if that is it because when you say it's on the outside of the nav, Nicole, does it work for you? Because for me, when I try this, oh, this is inside there. Oh, yes, absolutely. I did it in the wrong spot. This should be here. Because the nav is only a container. I'll be okay. Just do this here. Okay. And we'll just move that inside of there, and that should work just fine now. And we'll what you can do also is you can format the selection so that it's nice. And let's see now if it's fixed. Still not fixed. That's weird, isn't it? That should be totally working. Well, anyways, we'll Control Shift J. Is there any issues on the console? No. Not sure why that is totally funky and it should totally work. That is like not normal that it's hugged like that. And because did I include it somewhere else? Container. Well, let's do oh, that's that's the reason. I had an extra ending there. Oh, okay, that's better. I like that. Okay. Wondering why that was working. It's like, wow, maybe just had an extra div tag, a closing tag. Okay, so so now we're good. We have our basic structure for our page. Awesome. Let's put this up on GitHub, and we've completed our first page. So here, git commit -m. We'll say completed page templates. This is what this kind of is. Git push. Now this is the problem here. We're going to get into a problem. The problem is I want to make more than one page. And normally what you would do is you take this page index.html and copy it, copy, right? So take this page, Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V, Control V, and one more time. No, I think that's 5. And what we want to do is let's just rename them. So F2 to rename. And let's make this about, and F2 to rename this one. And let's make this projects. And F2 to rename this one, and services, and F2 to rename this one, contact. So those are all the pages, right? About, contact, index, projects, and services. So 5 of them. So let's start with the first one, about. This is the about page. The title should clearly say about us, something like that, about us. Right, and down in here, instead of the active link being the home page, it shouldn't be the home page, it should be the about page. So we move the active link from here to here. Yay, right? And same thing with the contact page. Oh, in the about page, let's also add something. Instead of hello 2112, let's say about us here in the H1, about us, right? So we can clearly see something new, something else. Contact here, let's go contact us at the title, contact us. And we want to move the active link from the home page to the contact page down here. So that's where it goes here. And we can get rid of that extra space there. It should say contact us here in the H1, contact us. There we go. And index.html, we will make some changes here. Here it'll be our home page, home, right? And down here will be welcome to our site, something like that. Welcome to our site. Yours would be talking about you, and you might have some other title in there as well. That stays the same. Package projects.html, this would be our projects up here in the title, our projects. And then I'm going to scroll down. We want to move the active link from home to projects. So that's where that goes, right? Get rid of that extra space and move it all down here. Well, this will say our projects. You see a lot of duplication, right? And as a programmer or as a designer, in your mind, you should say duplication is bad, right? Because it is. When you think about it, if we're duplicating code, that means something can be done better than what we're doing, okay? So let's think about this for a second. So this services are services, there we go. And here, oh, we also have that weird navbar brand we didn't take care of. Well, I guess it says COMP2112, so it's not so terrible. So we'll get that from there, from our home link, and put it here in our services link, and just get rid of the space, and then just go down here and say our services. So our services. So again, there's no content right now, but at least we have our structure. So that's our 5 pages. We just kind of made a very quick 5-page site. And I was hoping to make this a couple weeks ago for you, but at the end of the day, that's the problem. This is the problem we need to solve. The problem is we've got lots of duplication, right? And this doesn't make any sense. So save. And if I go to our link now, we can clearly see that there's 5 links. If I click onto them, you can see that it goes about, our projects, our services, and contact right here. You can see that the title changes and what it says here changes. There's no content in here right now, but at least we got something. Let's put this up on GitHub. And the question I'm going to ask you is, are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you're not. How about we say, I'll say created our 5-page site, created our 5-page sites. Git push. Just takes a bit longer to type. All good so far. Okay, good, good, good. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to give you a second to catch up. I want you to do that. Okay. Let's try this out. All right, so now Meet says you stayed behind. You'll do it later. Just finishing the typing. Good, good, good. Okay. Remember that you can always catch up by looking at your GitHub repository. Okay, so that's, I mean, the one that I'm sharing with you now. All right, so we propose the problem. This is the problem. And we want to start thinking about a potential solution, right? Because the problem is we have 5 identical pages for the most part. And it'd be really nice if we could inject this information, the header, and we can inject the footer, and we could inject the our nav bar, all this kind of stuff, main and nav bar, as opposed to what we have right now, which is, well, it's just duplication over and over again. There's a couple things to note on how to do this. One, we need to figure out what page we're supposed to be on. So that's the first part that we're going to do, right? We can have multiple pages, right? But we're using the same, we're going to use the same structure. So even if we have multiple pages, let's do one step at a time. I have multiple pages, but I have one nav bar that I can maintain. I have multiple pages, but I have one footer that I can maintain. Okay, so let's start with that first. So I want to create, instead of our page structure being like this on the left-hand side, let's think about making another folder. And we want to make it so that these are partial pages that I want to load. So I want to create a new folder here. So new folder. And this new folder is going to be called, we'll say views. Here's our views. So this is our views. All of our views are going to be, remember we talked about last week, model view controller. Well, these are all our views. And right now we have all our views out here, But inside of our views, there's two types of views that I want. I want content views and I want component views. So let's go into our views and add in another folder. We're going to call this components, lowercase. Schemes, it looks like this. On the outside of our folder structure, it's going to be, caps. So, capitalized, so views. And then inside of our folder structure, if there's a kind of a subfolder, it's going to be lowercase. Okay, that's our structure. So then here's components. Notice that components seems to be inside of views kind of in one line. Well, that's because components doesn't have anything inside of there. Let's add a brand new file in there in components. I'm clicking on there and I'm clicking on add new file. I'm going to call this file our header.html. So header.html. There we go. So header.html needs to be part of components. That's where it's supposed to be in. Okay, that's our views components. And maybe also under views, I want there to be some kind of content eventually as well. But for now, let's add in another component here, another component, which is our footer. So again, an empty file. We're going to call this footer.html. There we are. So footer and header, they're both inside of our components. And inside of our views, now I'm clicking on the views folder. I'm going to add a new folder called content. So content view, components views, right? Content right now is empty. And just to maintain the structure that I want you to do, I'm going to add in an empty.getKeep file so that we can maintain the structure when we put it up on GitHub. Okay. So views are going to be under, there's no folder, it's on the root folder right now. So the root means in the main folder on the outside, okay? And then inside of views, there's going to be components and contents, those two subfolders. And how this looks on our operating system, if I look in the operating system itself, you can see it looks like this. Okay, so this is the list that you would see here. So this is a mirror of what you see here. Inside of views, you're going to see that there's two folders, subfolders, components and content, right? But it looks clearly like this. Okay. So footer is empty and header is empty right now. But what we want to do is we want to copy everything from my, let's say we'll choose index.html. There's our index.html. And I want to grab the nav bar. I'm going to keep the header the way it is, but I want to grab the nav bar itself, just by itself, nothing else, copy it. And I'm going to put it inside of our header.html. So all it has is the nav bar. Now we can't use an active link. And we can't use an active link because this nav bar is going to be something that we share amongst all the pages. We need to think about another way of modifying the active link when we detect the page we're on. So here, let's just get rid of the active link, right? And we'll put this in. The links are all the same as an example, but now this is kind of a partial component, almost like a little partial page that we're using. Sometimes they're also called partials instead of components, okay? That's the header. In the footer, which is now empty, I want to go back to my index.html and just grab the footer content here, like so, copy. And I want to go into the footer.html and paste it in there. So again, this is a little fragment of code that I'm putting inside of these little files. So footer and header. Okay. So my job with you is to find a way to inject the header and footer into our code, right? So that way we don't have to maintain, 5 files worth of header. Like, for example, what if, here's the problem. What if I made a change to my index.html and my links, my nav bar here, which is what it looks like, I modify it. If I modify this nav bar in any way, and I want it to be very consistent across all my pages, I got to go through each page and modify each one of them, right? Which makes no sense. We don't want to modify each page individually. Imagine if I have, okay, for 5 pages, who cares? But what about 10 pages, 15 pages, 20 pages, 100 pages? It becomes untenable, all right? We can't do it anymore. We can't do anything with it at that point. So we want to make it so that it's unsustainable too and unmaintainable. So we want to make it so it's easier to maintain. This is why we've separated out that little chunk of code. And this way it's in one file. And when I make the change to one file, it changes the whole, which is what I want to, to do. Okay. So that's what I want to do here. Okay. I want to change kind of, only the stuff that I need. And then, I can modify it a little easier. Okay. We need to test this theory. And to do this, what I'm going to do is just for my index, the rest can stay the same. But just for my index.html, what I want to do at this point is erase my navbar. So we know that by default, my index.html has nothing, right? Let's just do this. Remember, we already made a copy of this, so don't panic. All right, but that's what we've done. And I also want to erase my footer. So I want to get here and erase my footer, right? So here now you can see that the footer and the header have been erased, right? So we don't have either one of those. Nice, nice. And what I want to do here for my header and my footer is inject the code inside of here. Now, this is not PHP. If you were doing PHP, yeah, wouldn't that be nice if I could inject like that? At inject. I don't want to do it that way, right? It'd be really awesome if I could just say inject and then just inject code inside there. No, we got to use JavaScript for that. And because we're doing JavaScript, this is what this course is about in many ways. Right, this is what we want to do. So if I save and I go back out to my page now, you're going to see that if I go back to my home page, there's no more navbar and there's no footer. We just have our content. So I want to change this programmatically by injecting code or injecting our page. And we're going to use Ajax for this. Okay, going back to our, not here. Going back to here to our page. How do I do so and all that kind of stuff? Well, one, we're going to start coding. And up until now, we haven't done any kind of JavaScript. All we've done is just some HTML. And I want to transpile because remember, we're using TypeScript. So I want to use Control-Shift-B, which is going to pull up my little taskbar up here. And then I want to choose the watch task up here. Here's my watch task. And that's going to allow me to transpile between TypeScript and JavaScript. We haven't made any changes. So all it's doing is just checking to see if there's any changes in our JavaScript files. It'll regenerate the files for you inside your scripts folder. Okay, so if you look here, I've got my app.ts and I've got my contact.ts, right? And right now I'm just gonna go back to my app.ts. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to make, have a system. All right, I want to have a system where I can load my header and I can load my footer and I can load my stuff. I want to be able to do that with everything that I have. So let's make a little function that'll allow me to do this. We have load contact list. We can do that, right? But I want to be able to load a header by itself. So again, I'm going to go just above the start method that we have here, and we're going to wipe some of this stuff out. This was just a test, to be able to load data. So we have all this load data stuff. I'm just going to grab all of this and I want to get rid of it all. So just going to say app started for now. So again, some modifications. There we go. So start doesn't say anything yet. And what I want to do is I want to make a brand new function. And the function is going to be called load header. Load header. And we know it's going to return void. So there's nothing that it's going to return anything. And we want to use, instead of like how we did it before, where it was $. $sign means, hey, jQuery. Remember the hey, jQuery. I want to use, and there's a lot of things we can do. We can do Ajax, we can use whatever. I'm going to use get again. So a $get, which is a get request. It sends a request to the server and does a round trip and it does a response back to the client. And I want to say what I'm looking for. Okay, now we want to assume that we're looking from the HTML page, not from the JavaScript page. So we're going to say /views, right? That's what we want, /components. That's the path that we're looking at. And inside components is going to be header.html. That is what we want to load, right? And then I want to have a little inline function where we pass in the HTML data that I want. That's the HTML data that I'm going to get from our file. And this little file, remember, $get uses jQuery to access the file header.html, right? Here it is. HTML data is where it's going to be stored. that is where all the HTML is coming from. So when I get the data from our header.html, it's going to read that file, just like we read the JSON file last time, right? It's going to read that file and it's going to inject it in place. So what I want is, let's see if we can read that file first. Okay, so I want to go here one step at a time, and I want to start thinking about what to do with that data. Let's print it out. So I want to say console log, and let's output that data. Let's see if we can get that data out. Okay, that's what it would look like. Okay, so that's, I just want to use this load header, and then I'm just going to call this load header right here. So load header, and the load header method is going to call load header, and it's just going to pump out the header. Let's see if we can actually read the header.html and pump it out to our console one step at a time. Okay, so that's what this does. So there's a load header function. And when I go back to my console, let's go back to here. And if I press Control-Shift-J or F12, you can see clearly that I'm getting all my data. This is actually me reading their file. So this is how we can read our file. Okay, check with you guys. Are you with me? I know some people just joined, and thank you for coming. But when I see you're good, how about my friends Sarah and Nicole and Alex and Andres and David and anyone else? Okay, Mark is good. Good, thank you. All right, awesome. Again, I'm trying to go a little slower, believe it or not. Thanks, Alex. Because now that we've got our data, I want to inject it onto our page, right? So how would I do such thing? Well, we know, thanks, Tyler. What we know is the console should give me the contact list, probably misspelled something somewhere. Well, let's go back. If it's giving you the contact list, try and save the file and make sure you transpile. All right. This is that never-ending thing that we always talk about, which is when you're using TypeScript, please remember to transpile. If you don't remember to transpile, then it's not going to work. Okay. So that's what has to happen there. So there's load header, right, as an example. And we know it outputs to the console, but it doesn't really do what I want it to do, right? I got to make sure that I inject that header somehow into our site, right? And remember, when we're injecting, what we want to do, right? I want to modify my DOM. I want to change my document object model live. And you guys should have done a little bit of DOM manipulation, if I'm not wrong, with our friend Scott the last time. So actually doing things like, I want to add something. How do I do it? And so on. So did you guys do that? Did you guys have a chance to modify the DOM at all? Yes, good. Thank you, Sarah. So what I want to do is I want to load my header and I want to inject it inside the DOM. But the only way that I can do that is if I have a target for what I'm looking for. So this is how it looks in jQuery. Okay, so we won't do the console log anymore. Thank you. That was just a proof that we can load it. I want to say, hey, jQuery. Oops. Hey, jQuery. I love when it does that stuff to me. Hey, jQuery, I want to do the following. I want to look, remember, jQuery has a selector syntax that looks like this. I want to search for an object that has header. That's the header object, right? Remember that what it does, caution with jQuery. jQuery doesn't just return one object, it returns an array of objects. Okay, that's what it does. Could I do this without jQuery? Yes, I could, right? I could just do, now document.getElement by tag name, and then by tag name, I could look for header, and it would return a single tag. So again, I could do it like this with jQuery, right? Or I could say this is the equivalent in just vanilla HTML, right? Or vanilla JavaScript. I mean, I would say something like document.getElements by tag name. Notice that by elements means more than one element, not one element, right? Elements by tag name. And I can look for the tag name that I have here, like, for example, the header, right? So that's the header tag name. It's going to return multiple elements. I only want a single element, right? And you know, that means I have to look for the 0th element on the page because it's going to return, this is going to return an array. That's what it does, right? It returns an array of elements. Okay, good. Failing to transpile. So document says, look at the document object model. Use the method called get elements by tag name. Elements, whenever we see elements, you mean in your mind, you should think array. So I'm getting elements, not just one element, okay? And then because it's an array has multiple elements, right? So it's a collection of objects, a collection of HTML elements. That's what it is. And I have 0, 1, 2, 3 to n number of elements. And this way I only want the first element, which is the 0th element, because we use zero-based counting when it comes to arrays. That's how it works, right? So here in my header, I want to say, this is how I can do. This is the vanilla JavaScript way. And then I can do something like, you know, append child, right, as an example, or inner HTML, which is something like this. I can say my inner HTML is actually equal to, because inner HTML itself, you can see that this is a string, right? It's a property. So I can say that's equal to HTML data, right? Because that's the data that we're getting, that we're reading from the file, right? So we're using jQuery for this, but then what we're doing was we're injecting inside of the header object that we find on the page, we're injecting this HTML data. Let's see if it works. So save. And if I go back out to the page, then sure enough, there it is. Right, there's our stuff. And if you actually look at the elements on the page and inspect them here, you can actually see that the header now has that nav bar that I've injected, you know, as an example, with a bit of code. Okay. So that's what you can see here. So then that's good. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is with jQuery instead of this. So this is the vanilla JavaScript method. But we can also use something like this. We can say, hey, jQuery, let's look for the header elements. That's the way we can do it as well. And we can just say, we want to inject HTML and we want to say HTML data. And this is regular JavaScript and this is jQuery. jQuery is shorter. And, you know, again, for some reason, it's a little bit less. If I go back to here, you can see, again, you see the same result. There's no difference, okay? But that is one way we can do it. So, you know, again, this is the, again, if I say this is vanilla JavaScript, right? And this is the jQuery, you know, version. Okay, so vanilla JavaScript version, and there's always going to be an equivalent way of doing things in JavaScript. And some people prefer to use JavaScript because, hey, I don't need to use anything. If I already know JavaScript, I can just use JavaScript by default, but we need jQuery anyway because we're running Bootstrap. So let's just use jQuery, right? I'll leave this in here so you can see what it is for now, and then later on we'll erase it, okay? So that's definitely one way of doing it, and we've loaded the header, right? But we don't know, how do I detect what page I'm on and all that kind of stuff? So depending on the page I'm on, right, that is going to give me, I want to load content and stuff for the page. Loading the footer is very similar. Let's do a footer function. So we'll say load footer, right? And just like before, we can do the same thing. We can do this, we can copy paste actually, exactly. And instead of it going to our component's header, we can go to component's footer. We can target the footer, right? And it'll inject the footer information on our page, right? Inside the right spot. All I've just changed is this and this. And if that's true, right, just saying, then right now the way it is, right, if you think about it, I mean, it's the exact same function. I've just passed different data to it. So there might be something we can do to optimize later on. Remember, my motto is make it work, then refactor. So make it work first. So back into the start, let's load footer. Right, and again, this is just proving out how this function works, right? So back to this, and you can see now we have our footer bar right down here. So it did it, yay, awesome. And so we're able to inject our header and footer instead of kind of having it originally on the page. However, warning, if you want to modify your header and footer, you've got to wait until the footer finishes loading, right? Because if you don't finish loading, then you can't modify the active link, because the active link doesn't exist for you to modify it. Let's go back. Let's circle back on that thing as an example. Remember that the asynchronous nature of JavaScript is going to load these little things, load header and load footer, whenever it feels like. It's not going to load it when I feel like it or in an order that it seems logical. It's going to do it however it feels like, right? Which means we cannot depend on that the header has been loaded, right, before we modify anything in the header, right? So what I want to do is I want to think about, I want to think about how we can do this, right? I want to modify the link, and I want to add the active. I want to make it active. That's what I want to do, right? And I want to think about how that can be done. So how do I make a link active after it's finished loading, right? So it's almost like I want to look at the link, and when it's done loading, then and only then do I want to make it active. Okay, that's what I want to do. Okay, because that's going to be the way it's going to be. How do I do that? And especially when I want to make sure that it's done loading. Well, we can assume that in here, in our load header here, we're still inside of the get, component here. And we're going to say that, I'm just going to just get rid of some of this code. This was for you, just so you understand what I'm doing here. I'm not using get elements by tag name. I'm just using our footer and little jQuery that does the same thing, right? It's a little piece of code like this big. So I want to say something like, okay, now that I have the header, because I've gone through the get process and I've got the header here, inside of this function, we should be safe to modify stuff, right? Well, how do I target the link, right? So I want to be able to add a link, right? And I want to, target the page, the HTML content. So in my header, here's what it looks like. I haven't created a hook for this, right? But it's almost like I want to search for something. I want to be able to hook into this somehow and define how this is done. There's a couple ways to do this. Okay, here's the easy way. We could, because we're modifying the anchor tag, right? The anchor tag with a nav link. We could add an ID for each of the anchor tags. So we could say something like anchor tag with a class of this and an ID of home. Okay, we can do that. And then what we can do is we can take the same ID and copy paste, and then make this about, and then projects, services, and contact. Remember that IDs are unique, or should be, and classes can be reused multiple times. So this will be the home page. Let's call it page, right? Just to make it so it's a little bit more readable for us. So the home page, about page, projects page, services page, contact page. Okay, that's a way of hooking into. We want to hook into it or create a reference to these particular things themselves, right? So depending on what the page is, we can hook into these things as well. Okay, so that's something we can do. The ID is what we can use to modify. And for now, let's just make it so that the home page itself, we know it's the home page. We also can think about this. That's, because this is kind of interesting. Then I have to do some kind of weird look and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's kind of a weird way of doing it. I could use IDs, but we have information already in the link. So let me show you how the ID works. We could say something like, back to our code. We could say something like here, we could say, okay, I want to target an ID of, so I can use jQuery, and jQuery, targets like normal. I can say, I want to look for an ID called our homepage, right? And what do I want to do with it? What I want to do is I want to change the active link. So inside of something that has an ID of homepage, think about this as CSS. How would you modify, how would I target the CSS in my header here? And if I had an ID of homepage, I want to modify clearly the class. I want to change the class name, right? From nav link, I want to add a class that is nav link or active. I want to add a class active. And so for that, going back to our app.ts, we have a thing in jQuery called add class. Here it is. By the way, again, there's an equivalent in JavaScript, no problem. Add class, and we want to add class active to the link, whatever that element is. I'm targeting the element that has an ID of homepage, and then I want to change the class. I want to add a class called active to that. Okay, let's see if that works. If I save it, and if I go back to my page, then we should see that the home page now is, the home link is active again. It looks bright, right? Like a bright white. Interesting, right? So I can do this, but I don't want to keep doing this for each page. Like, I want it to be automatic somehow, right? So I want to find, depending on what page we are in, right? I want to find whatever page we're in, and depending on the page we're on, somehow I want to modify the link, right? Instead of having an ID. What's another way to target this thing? Again, this is going back to CSS 101, right? Kind of thing. Let's take a look at that page for a second. I'm just going to go back to our header. Just one second. Okay, so this is our header. And here's our header page. So if you look at our header page, yes, we have that, but we also have this. We also have an href, right? So we know that index, about, project, services, and contact are there, and I'm kind of duplicating the stuff that's over here. Is there a way of looking inside the href tag, right? So we have, instead of an ID, I'm looking at the href tag for information. Is there a way? Do you guys know of a way, CSS, that I want to take a look at? I'm going to read the href tag, right, of each of the elements, right? And I could do a for each loop, right? I could go through, and I could loop through each of the elements, right? So if I wanted to loop through each of the elements on the page, let's go back to app.tss. I could say, I'm just going to comment this out. Definitely a way of doing it. But if I wanted to loop through, what if I said I want to, for each element that this returns, for each element in the header, right? For each element in my HTML data, right? And remember that what I'm targeting in the header is for every list item that has an anchor tag, for every list item that has an anchor tag, right? So I want to get a reference to all list items that have anchor tags and a class nav link. That's important, okay? So we're kind of really using specificity here to get right down into the weeds, right? When it comes to, kind of targeting, right? So again, if I was going to use JavaScript, just vanilla JavaScript, I would say something like document.get elements by tag name, right? So I'm looking at anchor tags, right? Prop, okay. So here's the anchor tag. So I get all my anchor tags, right? I could do it that way. I could also do query selector. So if I do query selector only returns one, but maybe I want to do something called query selector all. And query selector, what you do here is you add the selectors like you normally would in jQuery. So you can say something like, hey, well, I want to target all anchor tags inside of a list item, so list items that contain anchor tags, right? With a class of nav item, if I'm not wrong. Let's just go back to make sure what that is. Nav link, right? So let's go back to that. So nav link. So this basically says return all objects. I'm getting a list, a node list of HTML elements. That's what it returns. So it returns all element descendants of node that match selectors. Okay, that's what this is. Let's print this out. Let's see what that looks like. So let's do a console log. All right, so those are all of them. And if I did a console log here, then we're going to see a node list that includes all of this. Take a look, right? So I've got IDs in here because I put them in, but we're specifically looking at the anchor tag that has all of this information. That's what it returns. So it actually returns something, but it's a node list, right? I want to loop through. And if I want to find the href tag, look at the href tag. Here's the, kind of the href, which is our index.html. That is something that we can look as well. So I can say something like, okay, I want to loop through. I want to use query selector all to target all anchor tags. And whenever I see greater than sign, I want to say all anchor tags inside of all list items that contain a class of nav link. All right, that's a very specific thing that I'm looking for. And then what I want to say is, let's print out the href tag. So if I say something like for each, I can do that, right? But I want to be able to do like a for each loop through all this stuff. So I want to go through all of them. This gives me a range of items, right? And I can assign it to a variable. I can say let something like nav links is equal to this. I can say that, right? Where nav links, if I hover over, is a node list of elements. That's what it does. And then I can simply say something like for each. I can do a for each or a for of. There's different for loops. Remember, for each, for of, there's a for, right? All of those kind of things that are here. So let's do a for, and there's also a for in, right? So for in, for every key and object, or a for of, which is for every object of objects. Let's use this one. So I'm going to say this is nav links. Nav links. For every link in nav links. For every link in nav links, let's console log the link dot, and I want to have the href property. And it says that I really don't know what it is because link, it's just an element. But remember what we can do, right? Right now we're saying that a link is of type element, but what if I said that I want to cast the link as, right, something else? I want to cast the link as a, anchor tag, because we don't really, this doesn't tell you that we're returning an anchor tag. This just tells you that we're returning some kind of element. We don't know what the element is, right? So TypeScript is saying, I don't know what href means. I don't know what this means, this href stuff, right? Because link is of type elements. That's what it is. It's a node list of element type, and link then is an element. Could I say that it is an anchor tag? I could, if I say it's an anchor or some kind of HTML anchor element. Well, we could, but then it wouldn't work because it says, well, the left-hand side of a for of statement cannot specify what this is. Okay. We know we're getting anchor elements. We know we're getting anchor elements. Could I cast this the right side? So if I say something like as here as HTML anchor elements, right? I want to have an anchor element array. That's what I want, an anchor element array, right? Which is what I want. Again, for me to cast this nav links as that, right? Right now it's a node list of this. Here, what it's going to be is a link of elements. And if I was just to go with this, if there's a way of doing something like this, then you can see that href computes because that is the link that I want. Okay. I'm working really hard here because, we can do the same thing, as an example with jQuery. So let's see how the difficulty is to get it. By the way, this works. If I save this, and if I was to go out here, you can see I get all the links here of all the elements. Even though TypeScript is giving me this little error, JavaScript knows what to do, and it's going to go point out each of the links here, index, about, and so on. Again, this is not really filtered. I'm getting localhost 3000. It's not really a great list. Okay. Why? Because this is what I have up here. Whatever these links are is what I'm getting back. Right. So I could definitely do that. And I'm showing you how to do this just to think, not for any other reason. So that's definitely some way of doing it. Okay. Back to the drawing board. I like this idea. But how would it work with jQuery instead. So let's just toggle this into oblivion. And let's see how this works. If I did it with jQuery, I said, hey, jQuery, I want to find all list items inside of an anchor, all right, all anchor tags inside of list items that contain a nav link. And I want to target, right? Now notice it says append. If I want to find href, the href tag, I really can't do that. If I go to prop, and Hamid, you're correct. If I go to the property name, right? So if I say the property name that I'm looking for, right? The name of the property to set, and then the value that I want to set with, right? But I could say, let's look at the href property. That's the one I want to look at. And let's print that out. Console log. If I did that, what does it give me now? Again, no errors, which is cool. And I get this, right? I specifically targeted only one item. So here on the page, right, I'm looking at the first item. That's what it does. The first item that I come into, it's giving me, instead of a list of items, it's going to return the first item that I have here. So remember that it's saying is this returns a list and this returns the first one. If I do it kind of chained like this. Okay, cool. I could instead, you know, save this link. So I could and I say nav links equals to, again, I can do this, something like that. And I could do something like that looks like this. So I can save the thing that it returns. So this, remember, it returns an array of links. And here you can see that's exactly what it does. The jQuery element, one jQuery element that it returns. So it's a single element that is, that it's returning here. So if I was to print out, you know, this, a console log, nav links, right? And I'm only going at one link deep. You can see that it's going to return all of them. Here they are right here, a list of all of them. That's what it looks like, right? So all of the links here by just this one little thing here. So this is kind of nav links is an array of HTML elements. Okay, so if I did that, then I could loop in. So I can do a for in. Oops. For of, I'll be okay. And I can say things like, I want to loop through nav links. There we go. And this will be the link for every link in nav links. Right now, if I hover over, you can see that this is an HTML element, right? We know that that is the case. And if I want to console log the link, the link.href is what I want. And or the link.prop, and the prop I want to look at is href. Again, I'm going to have a bit of an error, right? Because we're saying that it's nav links. Nav links is an array of HTML elements, but we need them to be anchor tags. So again, interesting way of doing it, absolutely. And this is a way of using an external for loop, but what if we wanted to use something like that's built into jQuery, which is I want to do an each is what it's called. So I want to say, okay, I got one of these, and if I go each, right, for each one of these, what do I want to do? I can write a little function, right? And I'm going to loop through for each one of these things, and I could kind of go through and say something like console log, right, for each one. And the function is going to be the link. That's the thing that I'm going to return for each one of these things, right? For each link, I want to do the link itself. And let's see what I get with that. So can I print out each link? For I loop through each one of them, I return something, and I want to return the link. Well, it's not going to really do what you think it's going to do. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of like the index. That's what it's going to do, right? So the index gives me a link, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, of the objects that are inside of here. Well, what if I want to say whatever I return is going to be like $ this, right? So I want to find the, by the way, if I look through, by the way, I'm talking about stuff and I'm not really telling you what it is. If I say $ this for a second for jQuery, then you can see that the this keyword here is what we want to use, where we use the this keyword like so in order for us to get our data. So if I say something like, I want to get access to the thing that I got, all right, and I want to output the href tag or the prop that is the href tag, right? What $this does, I don't need the link anymore. What $this does, it says whatever this link for whatever this thing returns when I'm searching, whatever I'm targeting an item, whatever this thing returns, what I want to do is I want to change or get the property that I have here as well. So within a few lines of code, if I go back to my code now, you can see that I got all of them again. So I'm just showing you this, how this works, because maybe it'll give you some ideas on how to make this work. If I was going to target, specific things, right? Instead of me doing IDs, I could target this. Now I've got my link, but it's maybe too complex for me from what I want. And in fact, it's kind of surprising because I'm getting not just index.html, but the full qualified path name, https:// blah, 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 which doesn't really do me anything. It doesn't help me at all, okay? It'd be nice if home, about, project, services, and contact, right? These links here were the things that were going to help me, determine which one it is, right? So if it's home, if it's about us, if it's our projects, if it's our services, if it's our contact us, right? Depending on the, our header. So for example, in our index.html, you can see that the title is home, and then projects has, our projects. Maybe we can get smart and use the title, of our page to swap out what is active and what is not active, right? Because again, we're just trying to solve a problem. We're trying to solve a problem here, right? So here we certainly have these: home page, about page, projects page, services page, contact page, but who cares about this? We need to know which one of these things to activate when we're on a specific page. If it's the home page, we want to activate the home link, and so on. Okay. Well, we need to be able to detect that somehow. And we can do that with the document title. So if I go back to our code, again, I'm showing you some stuff, some thoughts that we have. I could automatically go and target this. This is kind of what I want to do, but I want to loop through and I want to do a switch case. I want to switch through, right? So something like I want to do a switch case, and I want to switch through the document.title, whatever the document title is. Oops. And case, if it is home, then do something. Case, if it is about us, then do something else. Don't worry about how, I'm going to format this in a second. Case, if it is our projects, then do something else. Case that if it's our services, then do something else. Those are things that I can do about. And then case, if it's contact us. Case, if it's contact us, or contact us, then, oops, then do something else. And let's just format this little thing. We can just highlight this whole thing and right click and just say format selection. And it should be nicely ordered. And this is from our formatter that I've installed. Or you can just backspace and do what you're going to do. All right, so now that I've got this looking like nice, so depending on the title, I want to target the page that I'm looking at. So I can say, let's cut this out, and I want to target this thing. Well, cut it out. And I want to say that if it's the home, then go with the home page, add class active. If it's the about us page, this is brute force. And you can see that all I'm going to do is swap out each one of these things depending on which page it is. So home page, about page, and then our projects page, services page, contact page. Okay. So this is going to swap out or add the class active only when the document title matches the name of the page, right? So if I was to do it this way, right, I don't have to iterate. I'm specific to the links I want to modify. Again, a little bit brute force for what we're doing. But if I go back here, you can still see that our link is active. Cool. Okay, excellent. So that's what the load header does right now. And it'll allow me to swap out my header for this. Okay, good. Awesome. Footer is not going to change much and so on. And I've got this switch case happening, right? So it'll do this stuff, right? And for the most part, I can go into each one of my pages now. And I can say something like, well, I don't need the header from our, I can remove the header and the footer from our about page. The save, make sure you save everything, the contact page. So we've kind of tested everything out, right? We've said that I know how to put the header and footer in now, or depending on what page, any page that I get in there, I'm going to grab the content or the header and footer for all these pages. Cool. There's the contact. And there's the projects page. I don't need to do all this because that's duplication, right? I'm getting rid of all the header information. I'm loading it in, right? Instead of me having to manually put it in with HTML. There's save. And services. There we go. Right? And I think I've done them all. Let's see, projects, services, our index page, yes. Contact page and an about page. We've done them all, right? All of them should be saved. Make sure you save everything so that, you know, you don't have any issues, right? And by the way, for your, let me go back to this. I will, 1 second, Sarah. For your assignment 1, you do not have to inject your navigation. You can have the exact same navigation throughout the entire assignment 1, right? I didn't ask for that. What I asked for your assignment 1 was for you to inject, you know, in your page, all the text with some kind of, that are going to come from strings. You're going to hold them as strings inside of your app.ts, and then you're going to inject them into the page through some kind of append function or something like that, you know, with JavaScript. Okay, back to app.ts. So this is what it's going to look like right now. Will this work? Will this work? Because basically what I'm saying is, hey, depending on the title, modify the active link, right? Modify the active link. Huh. Nice. Like it. So far, right? Is that good, Sarah? Are you good? Can I move on now? So let's test it. So one is making it and the other one is testing it. So let's test it out and see if it works. So again, if I go here, you can see I've got my home page highlighted and about page also highlighted. Look for a second, you don't see any kind of you know, kind of nav bar, and then it kind of appears, but every single time we go to it, it should now highlight and it should have a nav bar that gets injected on the page from that single location that we created. Okay, so again, solves. This is a solution that we made. This is one solution. Let's put this up on GitHub so you can have what I have. So again, going back to git at dot, git commit -m, and we'll say injected header, footer, header and footer with JavaScript. Hit push. Okay, so I've been able to do that. Now you guys should have all of that stuff like that in here. Any questions around the process? So again, notice that in our start, it's very simple. We load the header and footer for every page. And what we're doing is, depending on the document title, then we would inject or we would only make the class that's active depending on the ID of the link. We added IDs to the, you know, the header. Notice each anchor tag has its own ID, right, and so on. No, Andre is asking if we need injecting, do we need to inject in the portfolio for when it comes to your nav bar? No. But remember in the document that I've shared with you that you do need to get, is it okay if I do? Yeah, it is. You can certainly do that. If you really want to do this method, which I think is better, then yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, guys, I mean, if we did this, let's go back to our little thing here. Let's go back to our app.ts. We're kind of like, you know, got our header and a footer. We're injecting our title. But maybe we can also do is we can also, well, you know, not only do that, but we can also load our content, right? Because our content is like, you know, just a little bit of content inside of our page. And wouldn't it be nice if we had content pages, right? Content pages. So, right? What if we took all of this stuff, other than the index.html, we took our about, contact, and projects and services. We took all these pages, right? We took all these pages, and we don't want to necessarily move our content, right? But we want to inject our content inside of here too. Okay, one step at a time. We want to do that. So we want to inject our content in main, depending on the page that we're on, our services, our whatever it's going to be. I want to inject the content in here as well. That's what I want to be able to do. Well, we need content pages for this. So let's just copy all the pages about contact, index, our projects and services page. I'm going to copy them. So Control C, go into our content folder and Control V. And we have copies of our about, contact, index, projects and services inside of our content page. So in my about page, all I really need, I don't need anything else. I don't need any of this. I just need, well, this, right? I just need this part. That's the content that we have right now for our page. Now you might say, who cares? It's not that really, it's not that sexy or weird, but that's it. That's the content for my about page, right? And the same thing goes with my content page, my contact page. My contact page would be just right now, anyway, it's just this, right? So just this part, right? Don't laugh, don't laugh. I know you're like, oh my God, there's not much in there. Well, but there isn't any content right now. There's like hardly any, right? So this is what the content would look like for our contact page. And my index page, we should rename this to home page. So home.html. How about we spell it properly? Home.html. And again, it would just have this content right here, right? So right now, not much in there, right? I'm just building it up with you, okay? I've got, there's a purpose to there's a method to my madness, as they say, right? So just building this up with you. There's our content, right? And projects, right? So again, we're just gonna grab all this. Again, this is the copy that I'm modifying, right? I'm not modifying the original. The original stays the same right now because we just want to inject our content and our services, right? Okay. There we go. Okay, let's make sure that these are clean. So only four lines. There's 5. We don't need the extra line there. Save, HTML, home, contact. We don't need that extra line there. It's nice and clean. I mean, I'm being nitpicky here. Doesn't matter. But why have the extra line of code when you don't need it? Oh. All right, so that is about, contact, home, projects and services inside of my content pages. And what I want to do is, instead of me having content in these, we just can erase them. And we can modify, we can modify each of these pages so that it only has, well, there's no content. The content is also going to be injected. Okay. I'm also injecting content. I'm just getting rid of all this data. We don't need it. All right, so about content, contacts, index, projects, services have no content now. And if you actually go to the page and try it out, you can see there's nothing in all the pages now. If I go there, we can see the links, but there's no content. I want to inject the content in here. And the way we can do that, of course, is the exact same way. So go back to app.ts, make another little method. We'll call it, and right, we'll say load content, right? And the content that we're going to load is for the page itself. And you know what? We can have our little link, like the switch case again, right? So I want to get the content. Let's copy all this. Oh, we got copy pasting spaghetti, my friends. And instead of us getting in the components, this is not going to be the case. It's not going to be the way we're going to do it, right? Bear with me. We want to do a switch case this time to detect the title. And depending on the title, we're going to load different content. Okay, so home, I'm going to load the content. And we can do similar to this in one line. So we can say something like, okay, I want to target the, footer. So first let's $get. There's $get. And I can say that I want to go into views, content, and depending on the home page, I'm going to go into my home.html. That's what I want to read, right? That's the content I'm going to read. And I want to read the contents. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my HTML data. Here it is. And in one line, in one line, I want to do something with the content, right? So once I read the data, then I want to inject it where? Well, just like we did over here, we're going to inject it inside of our, I'm going to take this little line of code here, and we're going to go over here. And we say instead of header, we'll inject it into main. All right. Hey, right? Could do that. Okay. And we can do that like multiple times. By the way, you're seeing if it's not bothering you yet, it should be bothering you. Okay, just saying. Okay, it should be bothering you. If it's not bothering you yet, it should be. It should be. Okay, because remember what we're doing here for each of these things, right? I'm duplicating, right? And whenever I'm duplicating like this, right, depending on the page, I'm saying that depending on, for this is home, and this is about, and this is services or projects. Here we go. And services and contact. Okay. So that's a way of doing it. Load content. A little different than the other ones. The other ones had, first we got the content, then we did the switch, then we changed the class. Here, first we're just doing it in one line. First we find where we are, then when we know where we are, we get the content and we inject it into the main tag. All right, a little bit different, but for the most part, very similar. So we have load header, load footer, and load content. Okay, so our start looks very, very, very simple. And then when we run it, going back to our code, you can see now our content is back, right? Because we're injecting the content inside of our page. Awful. It is awful, isn't it? Right? Because here we got a switch case. We got another switch case over here. We can keep doing switch cases, if else, if else, if else. That's what a switch case is. Or we can do it once. Or we can do it once, right? So imagine if we want to be able to switch our content based on our document title, right? We can do our switch content first, right? And instead of doing what we're doing here, I want to have some generic functions to load data and inject them. Okay, that I think might be better than how we're doing it right here. Okay, because this is a lot of duplication. Again, this is where we do the refactoring piece. And also we have another problem. We have another problem in that we have a bunch of duplicate, like, so we have like content that's the same as this one. And it'd be nice if we only had one template and we can inject it inside that and inside that page. Hence the single page application thing that I was talking about, right? It's going to save us some time and some effort, right? So how do we do this stuff? How do we inject it inside of our pages, right? When we want to do that, we want to have one index.html, and depending on which link we click, the link, I want to inject a bunch of stuff. I want to change, depending on the link we're choosing, whatever that link is, I want to capture that link. I don't want to reload the page, but instead of reloading the page, I want to inject the proper content into the page, depending on the link I've chosen at the top. It's going to look like we're switching pages, but we're not. This is the whole concept, the model of the single page application. Quicker loading, less issues when it comes to the way we're doing things. And we're making our single page application from scratch, as opposed to doing it the other way around. Okay, which is multiple pages. Multiple pages, ugly. Single page, more beautiful, but a little bit more challenging to kind of put in your head. So we almost like need this switcheroony thing that we have here, but instead of here, what if we put it down here? So let's just get rid of this for a second, just for a second, right? And if I said, here's my switch, I want to switch on document title. So depending on the document title, I want to do something, right? So let's say, what are we going to do? Okay, what if I did that? What if I said that depending on the document title, and the document title is the page that we're changing, right? Well, I want to modify the content, right? So I want to do stuff, I want to load the content, load this, load that, and whatever it's going to be. Well, we could do this like here in our load header, we have all this, right? And we're swapping out this stuff. So, I mean, I could typically do all of this, based on when the thing loads. But again, the asynchronous nature of JavaScript is going to prevent this from happening, right? It's going to prevent this from happening because, well, it's bad, right? It's really bad because what's going to happen is here, if I go back to my index.html page and I say, well, let's load the header and the main and the footer, we don't know when any of this is going to happen. It's going to happen whenever the server feels like it, which means we cannot depend, going back to I'm just talking about this with you, just speaking out loud about my problem, right? We cannot depend to say, well, if this is the case, then load stuff in. Can't do that. So that's a problem, because I mean, I could say something like, okay, well, I want to, load my page, and depending on whichever page I load, then I want to display this, I want to display that, I want to display the other thing. Okay, I could do that. So what I mean by that is my code can look a little bit, well, like some kind of, I can still use the load header and all that kind of stuff. But what I want to do is as soon as my header loads, then it's going to inform, the rest of the stuff that I'm doing. Okay, so I load the header, that's nice. And then what I want to do is, depending on the header, if I click something on the header, right, then whatever the active link is that I'm clicking, right? So depending on what the active link is, as an example, if you think about what that active link is, I'm just talking this out. Then what I want to do is I want to change the document title. I want to change the document title, to whatever it's going to be. Oof. Okay, let's do it simply so you understand. So I could say load header. Okay, I load the header, yay, right? And I make the active link. I leave that stuff up there the way it is. Let's one step at a time. I have all this, which is my content, right? And then at the bottom, I have my load footer. Load. Come on. Load footer. I could do that. So at the end of the switch case, right, as an example, then this is this part. There we go. Here's my load footer. And I could say, here's our load my content. Depending on the content, I can do it out here. And I could say something like when I'm loading my content up, depending on the document title, because I'm clicking the link to whatever it is, I could say that I want to load my content a bunch of times and pass in the active or the document title in here, which is not going to really save me much, right? Because all I'm doing is going to call load content a bunch of times. So again, nice idea, to do this kind of stuff, but how, sure, we can do it this way for now, but how does it work where I want to inject my title, or inject my content based on my document title? And if I have a single page application, my document title is not going to change, right? So back to the drawing board. I definitely want to do this. So load header, 100%, that's going to happen, right? And when I load my header and load my footer, right, if my initial load header and load footer is going to go to my index.html page right here. And let's suppose I don't have these other pages at all. I don't have services or projects or contact or about. I only have my index.html, and that's going to be my template for the entire application. Then if I go back to my header, instead of having links, because these links here would be no good anymore, right? I want to detect which of these links are clicked. And if I click them, I'm going to make it so that it looks like I'm injecting content, but I'm not actually going to be in here. Okay, so let's do that. Let's make these links look like this. So they'll look like links. Okay, so they're not actually going to do anything here when I click onto them. But I can use event handlers to do something different. So here, I'm not actually loading any of these links up. Okay, we get to our index.html. By default, the first thing we do is going to load our index content. Okay, that's what we're going to do here in our code, right? And to show you this, if I go back to my code right now, just because I changed these links here in this one file, and if I go back, I got to go back manually to my index.html, none of these links will work anymore, right? None of them work, right? So I can't click on any of them and they're not going to do anything. Okay, so even if I go to one of them, you see that nothing happens, right? Because they're not active links anymore. Okay, so that's one. But then I can detect afterwards which of the links I've chosen, right? So, and we have an initial state. Let's go back to my app.ts for a second. So I've loaded my header successfully. I've done this, loaded my header. And instead of doing this switch case thing where I add a class active, then by default, let's not do anything. Let's say, no, we're not going to do any of this yet. Okay, this is kind of, we're ahead of ourselves. We're going to say, we're not going to do that. So we load our header up, and as soon as we load our header, now, well, if I click anything, I want to be able to do something with it, right? So what I want to do is I want to find an anchor tag that is, as an example, that is inside of my list item, okay? And what I want to do is when I click onto it, so any of the anchor tags, I want to know what my ID is, right? And by the way, if I go back to my HTML, right, I have home page, about page, projects page, services page, contact page. We could shorten this back to what it was. I could make this home about, again, this is an iterative process. So I just wanted to show you this for a second. Projects and contact. And notice that home, about, project, services, and contact match with the about, contact, home, projects, and services inside of my contact pages. So I changed the IDs. The IDs are going to be our way of injecting, or what I'm injecting. And what I'm going to go back here is to say, when I load my header, I want to have all of the links active. So I'm going to say that I want to target all anchor tags in a list item, all anchor tags in a list item for now. And I'm going to say that let's do the following. Let us add a on click listener for the anchor tag. And when I click on the anchor tag itself, right, it's going to change two things: the document title, right? So I'm going to say the document.title is going to equal to the list item ID. So remember that I have my document title is going to equal to the dot this, the thing that I'm returning from this hunt. I'm hunting for all items as an example. And I want to click on this, and I want to get the prop for this thing. And can I get the prop that is the ID? And I want to set that ID up as my document title. Is that possible? So I'm not moving anywhere yet. I'm just getting the prop and putting it in there. Now, careful. This is returning a list of items. For each item, if I click on it, I want to change the document title to whatever the ID is of the header, these things. Okay, for now. Bear with me. Bear with me. Let's see how this works if I was to do something like that. So again, make sure you save all. So up here, save all. And if I go back to here, and if I click on the home link, take a look at the title, home, change to lowercase home, about us, change to lowercase about, our projects, change to lowercase projects, our services, change to lowercase services. And this is a way of me checking to see if my little event handler, which is here inside of this one line, there's a couple lines of code here. My event handler detects if any anchor tag is clicked that is inside of a list item. Now, this does not include this anymore. So this doesn't do anything, right? So notice that that is an anchor tag, but that anchor tag does not exist inside of a list item. That's up here. And so clicking on our brand now isn't going to work anymore, okay? So that's something to notice, okay? We could make a special case for that, but for now, we don't care. So any one of these things that are clicked is going to change the title. And what we want to do, of course, is to change the title to, capital H, capital A, capital P, and all that stuff. How do I do that? How do I capitalize an object, right? I want to, take the title, whatever that document, that title is, and I want to make it uppercase, if you will, right? Okay. So it's like I want to make a substring is what I want to do. So going back to this, right? Going back to this, we're doing it in one, and instead of doing it in one, let's do it like this. We'll say let's call it title. Let my title equal to this. So this is the first part. So I get the title from the thing that I've clicked. And then what I want to do is I want to say that I want to get a substring. I want to get a substring of my object. So I get a substring somehow. Now remember that this, when you look at what prop gives me, prop returns any, and it should return a string. So I want to get the substring, and the substring is going to be from 0 to 1, and I want to make it uppercase. Now notice how it's not helping me. It's not really helping me doing this. If it doesn't help me, that's a good indicator that what I'm doing is wrong. if I don't get any kind of help, right? So, right? What does this prop ID do? This prop ID, right? So let's go here for a second and back this up. Console log title, right? And what does this console log actually give me? What is this prop ID? What does it return, right? So save, going back here, and let's look at the console. If I click on any one of these things now, it says home, about, our projects, and so on. It looks like a string, right? So this kind of works. That's what this does. It is, if you look at it, it says of type any. I could cast it as a string, I could say that, right? And now it's a string. Once I cast it as a string, it becomes a string. And when it's a string, right, I could say that my title dot, and then as I can do that substring, it'll give me the code hinting now that I want. And I want to say, I want to take that first character from the title, which is from 0 to 1, right? I want to create a brand new substring. I want to convert it to uppercase. Here's my uppercase. And once I've converted to uppercase, I want to add it back into the original title that I had, right? So I want to take the title, right? And I want to go substring, right? And I want to start from the first character, not including the 0th character, not the first one, not the 0th one. And I want to kind of create this new object that is uppercase. There is no way of making something capitalized in JavaScript. And this is kind of the code for that, right? So this is making something like, I'll say, let's just say title or capitalized title, just to give you a sense of what's happening here. So first I get my title, I cast it as a string, and then this first part here, this part right here, gets the first character of the string. Substring, it tells it's a range from 0 to 1, where 0 is the first character in my title. For example, home, it's the H, right? And I change the character to uppercase, okay? But I get a substring. So the original title might have been home, H-O-M-E, right? I only care about the first character, H, okay? And I make it capital. And then I use another substring that starts at O. I skip H, right? Because substring 1 means instead of substring starting at 0, which is the first character, the 0th character, I start at the 1th character, the second character, right? And when I start the second character, this here is H-O-M-E, right? Or O-M-E. Let me just annotate this for you so you understand what I'm talking about, so you're not confused. So this here, substring 0, 1, this is the H, okay? And this here is O-M-E, okay? O-M-E. So this is H-O-M-E. And what I'm doing here with the H is I'm making it H, right? So I'm turning H to H, and then I'm adding it on to O-M-E to create my capitalized title. That's how it works, okay? Again, I want to show this to you. So this capitalized title, and by the way, we could have done this in one line, but I'm just breaking it down. It's not going to hurt me to do it this way for now, right? I'm going to take this capitalized title and add it to the document title. So document.title is equal to capitalized title, okay? We could really just say document.title is equal to this, which we don't have to make an extra, kind of variable here, right? Which is a little bit nicer. So that's what this does. So this kind of it capitalizes this, and we can actually put some comments here. So it's capitalize the link and make it the document title. That's what it does, okay? Okay, so that's what this does. And now if I go back to my code here, and if I went home, then you can see that home is caps, about is caps, our projects are caps, and so on. Okay, so we can get that right from the link without doing an if else. All right, so that's kind of the first thing that I want to do. Are you with me? How are we doing? Am I killing you yet? I don't want to kill you, really, I swear. But the idea here is that you understand what I'm doing in the header. The header is key because when the header opens up, right, as an example, you know, I've got the ability for me, I have my header, I know that it's there, right? And then I can do my switcheroonie. I can add, you know, kind of event handlers on this thing when I'm clicking. Okay, good, David. And then what I'm doing with the event handler is the event on is like add event listener. That's what this thing is, right? That's what the jQuery on is, right? An add event listener. And then I'm changing the title. And now that I have the title, right? I know that the title switched. Well, now I can do other things with it. Like I'm making it look like it's supposed to, right? So loading the header really is in many ways loading the content, right? So based on the content now, right? I could load the content based on title right from here. I could say that, okay, fine, I've done that. I changed the title. And I could go here to load content. I'm gonna call it from in here. So load the header, and then the header loads the content. It's kind of a cascade. And instead of looking at home, about us, our projects, our services, and contact us, which was the original titles, we're just gonna go home, about, projects, services, and contact. All right, so that's the only thing that changes here. Okay, and then we still inject the content as normal. So that's, we load the content, load the title, and then bam, we only do this once, right? And we load the footer as normal because the footer has nothing to do with anything else. So it kind of looks like this now. So we've kind of streamlined a little bit. And here's the beautiful thing, right? If I go back to my original location, if I go back to you know, my code, so save this and go back to my page, then if I go back to home, we can see welcome to our site. About, we should see what we're expecting is that when we click on this thing, that all of this is going to change. We want to inject inside of here what we want, but so why isn't it doing it? So home, you can see that load content. I'm calling load content from after I've done my title. I've done my title, right? I've clicked onto it. I've loaded my content, and well, none of this works. How come? I mean, a home of projects, whatever, the title, home, about, project, services, and contact is right here, but it doesn't seem to be targeting anything, right? Here's my main. It's supposed to go to main and changing my stuff, but why doesn't this work? Why? So remember, I just changed my title. My document title became something else. And here I'm switching on document title, and I'm switching based on what I'm doing. So let's try this again. So here, if I refresh, here's my index.html. Make sure we're on my index.html. If I go about, sure, it changes my thing to about, but the detail is not the right detail, right? And let's take a look at what's happening in here. So is it giving me an error? So no, it's not giving me any errors, right? But it's also not doing anything. Okay. Your console says load content is not defined. Well, my load content is right here, right? So here's my load header. Here's my load content. I did this right here. Oh, why isn't this working? Can anyone kind of recommend why is this not working? I mean, I'm changing the title, right? Well, by default, we need some defaults, right? When the app starts for the first time, right, which this start function only triggers once, right? I want to set the title. So I want to say document.title is equal to home. So I'm setting the title to home, okay? I need to do that first. This is kind of my initial load, right? Because this is something that's happened. So initial load, right? I change this and I load my header, I load my footer, and my load header and load footer happens here, right? And I made event handlers so that I can go here. But remember this load content? That load content is in load header, and that only triggers once, right? I want to make sure that the load content triggers every time I click on a link, which means this can't be here, right? This has got to be inside of here, right? So when I click on the link, reload the content. That's what it means. Uh-oh. But Could this mean that I'm going to load the content every single time? What is it going to do? Well, let's go back and see what happens, right? So back to this, I got no content, right? And if I click home, I get our content, about, and projects and services and contact. It's good. But initially I got nothing. So if I go back to home, it's okay. But if I go refresh, then there's nothing. I don't get any content initially because nothing has been clicked. That's not exactly what I want, right? I want to be able to load my content, and I want to do an initial load content thing, which means that here's my load content. I'm clicking on this the first time, and load content switches on title. So maybe I can just do something that looks like this. Load contents. Here, right? The initial load, right? I load content once, I load header once, I load footer once, and then load header creates event handlers, and those event handlers are going to continue to trigger different things, right? Save. And now you can see for the first time it loads, and then if I click all these other ones, we're good to go, okay? This is our first iteration of our single page application, if you think about it, right? I don't need any of these other pages now. I don't need the about page. Let's get rid of it. Delete. I don't need the contact page. Delete. Actually, let's undo those changes. Undo. I meant these pages. I need the contact pages. I don't need the delete. I don't need this one. Delete. I don't need the contact page, this contact page, or this projects page, or this services page. Delete. Right? And all I have is my index.html, which is my manifest for injecting everything else. I have one page and I inject everything else. Okay, save. Let's put this up on GitHub. Git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say first version of Spot, single page application, git push. Are you with me? Do you understand what I did? So instead of having multiple pages, right? What would we have multiple pages if I can take care of the content right in here, right? Now, let's talk about spas a little bit, and there's positives and negatives about these things. But for the most part, if you think about this, if I was to go here now, and I could inject our pages, the page structure the way it is, I'm not really moving from one page to the other. I'm not doing that. I'm staying in the same spot, right? I'm right here. I'm right in the same page. I'm not loading anything, right? I'm not reloading anything. All I'm doing is swapping content out from a single page, which makes my page load super fast. And what's happening is the only time it goes to the server is when I need content. But this is server side, sorry, this is client side stuff. This has nothing to do with the server. So I never even go and do a round trip. I'm not even loading a page from the server. I'm just having the same page and just swapping out content, which makes it super fast. Let's go to this. So what is this thing anyway that we're making? So again, is like we said, it interacts with the user by dynamically rewriting the current web page with new data from the web server instead of the default method of browsing and loading entire new pages. We don't want that anymore, right? The goal is faster transitions, but there's another goal that we've been talking about, which is more maintainable sites, okay? We don't want to be able to have 5 pages with the exact same navigation theme throughout the entire page. That doesn't make any sense. And we're doing this all client side. We have nothing to do with the server on the back end. The server is not helping us in any way right now, okay? So that's an important way of doing things, okay? So again, when we think about this, all of our code, HTML, CSS, and everything is dynamically loaded. The page does not reload, keep that in mind. So if you depend on the page reloading for something, like for example, a contact page, where you click on the contact page to send something to somewhere or whatever, that's not going to happen, right? And we have several frameworks that use this kind of idea. One of them, a very popular one, is Angular, and you can find that at angular.io. Let's go to that page. Angular was one of the first front-end frameworks that came out. It was developed by Google and Microsoft. And again, I'm just giving you a bit of a thing with this. And Angular was made for developers by developers. And what I mean by that is it is a little bit more complex as a front-end framework than anything else out there right now, still, okay? It is fully complete. It also includes things like two-way data binding, which allows you to do things like code injection on the page. Again, all client side, so nothing to do with server side whatsoever. And this is one of the most popular front-end responsive frameworks out there, okay, or it was anyway. But at one point, it got superseded by another little player on the web because, again, JavaScript was cool. Like I said, it had two-way data binding. HTML template is compiled in the browser. So what happens is it does this thing called the shadow DOM, which means that it plays with the document object model first and then injects it into the browser afterwards, similar to what we're doing, but in a more complex manner, okay? And then it keeps repeating it for every page view. It uses this model view controller framework, which we've talked about before, but by far the most popular one right now is called React, which is what we're going to be handling in the second half of semester, right? So here it's similar. React is another front-end framework, and it uses the exact same idea, the single page application model, right? And what it does uses something like Ajax to inject pages with content, okay? A little bit easier, but I'll tell you, over the last few years, right, React is becoming a beast like Angular, right? Whether you use Angular or React, React's popular because everyone's using it, but at the end of the day, it's just in many ways, just as complex, or could be, as Angular, right? It's not made for developers by developers, and you can kind of use part of it or all of it all at once. But when we use Angular, we pretty much use all of Angular. If I use Angular, I use all of Angular. And if I use React, I use all of React, right? Which is like, I don't have Angular and React kind of mixed together. I don't do that. I don't sit there and say, I want to only have one part of my site with React, only one part of my site with Angular. No, it's either all or nothing typically, the way it works. So the idea that this had when React first came out, which was, well, this is kind of like a non-opinionated, kind of framework where you can plug in the stuff that you want. That's how it used to be. But nowadays we just use it all, right? That's kind of how it is, right? So it kind of took away, I guess its simplicity, and it uses this different, I would say, syntax for injection. So what's happening here is we inject our tags inside of the page, right? We inject HTML in the page, whereas Angular composes pages while having some kind of shadow DOM. It's kind of a different way of doing the same thing. So that's the second framework. Again, the most popular one, and we're going to be dealing with that in the second half of semester, right? Again, both frameworks are single page application frameworks, okay? And finally, Vue.js, which is, I would say, still number 3. Another front-end framework, a little bit lighter than the other two, I would say, very popular amongst people who don't want complexity, right? So Vue.js is the other one. There are others that I haven't mentioned here. One of them is Svelte. Okay, that is kind of an up and runner, if you will. Svelte is a pretty awesome little front-end framework, very, very lightweight, minimalistic, right? It does similar things to, when it comes to code injection, but it doesn't have a virtual or shadow DOM anymore. It doesn't do that. It kind of does things slightly differently than it did before. And again, it's very, very simple the way things work. It's, again, becoming one of the most popular ways of doing things. And in future iterations of this course, we may switch from React, as an example, to Svelte, because just the way it is. And that's the nature of the web as well. The web keeps on evolving, which is hard to keep up with, right, at times. All right, so we talked about some frameworks, and what is this single page application stuff? Well, back in 2006, we used Ajax for everything, and we used jQuery. jQuery and Ajax were the two, I would say, foundational or technologies that we use to build a single page application. And guess what we've just done? We've just done something very similar right now with no frills. We don't have a lot of really cool looking effects or whatever, but for the most part, that's what we've done, right? And so again, they're quick, it's more efficient to load and everything else, but there are some disadvantages of SPAs, and I want to talk about the disadvantages of SPAs. One thing is search engine optimization. It requires a stable content, and we're not doing that. We're swapping out content, right? So if you want to use SEO to improve your page's rank in the order of things, when you kind of do a Google search, it can become a problem. And that's the same thing that all front-end frameworks have an issue with. Now they deal with it in different ways and they inject other keywords and so on than more modern ones, but that is definitely an issue. SPAs require JavaScript, so if somehow your browser doesn't support it, again, for older browsers, or there might be some browsers that don't support every feature of JavaScript, it might act weird, for example, on mobile phones or something else, may not work exactly as you expect. And also from a browser history perspective, this model breaks the browser's design for page history navigation. I can't go forward or back because when I go back, I'm actually going back to some other page. There is no going back and forth anymore, right? It's the same page. So that's something we have to figure out. And we can fix that with something called the History API. What is the History API? It is a part of the DOM. And what it does is every time you go on your browser, it keeps track of all the pages that you've been on. So for example, if I'm home and then I go to my projects page or my contact page or whatever page I want to go on, we have something called a history stack, and the history stack keeps track of which page we're on previous, and if I went back, which page is next, right? Keeps track of those things. So there's some properties for the history API. One of them is length. I can know kind of a number representing the number of elements in the history. How many times have I gone back and forth? How many pages can I go back to? There's also an object called state, which is basically, it represents the entire history stack itself. And you can actually set up the history stack the way you want with the state object, okay? And there's a couple of methods we can use. We can go back or forward. So instead of you clicking on the back and forward buttons of your browser, you can programmatically program your browser to go back and forth as if we click the button. It's almost like a way of activating the forward and back buttons in the browser with JavaScript, okay? And the same thing goes with push state and replace state. Push state, what it does is it pushes a new session or a new location, if you will, to the history stack, which basically says, I was just here, okay? And I can replace the URL even to show what location I'm in. And this is what we're going to do, my friends. We're going to use the push state method, right? So we can replace the URL, and so it looks nice instead of how it looks like this. If you go back to my contact, it says localhost 3000 index.html. We want to say that this is /index.html. That's what we want to say. So it'd be much nicer than this, because that doesn't look right, right? Look, it just says, it doesn't even give us a place that we're at, right? So we want our URL to reflect which one we've clicked. Huh, okay. Well, how do we do this? How do I use the history API to get that done? So let's go back to here. And if I go back to my app.ts, well, we know that when I go to my load header and I click on my button, what I want to do is I want to use my history API, to have that done. So I want to say something like history.pushState, right? I load my content. Actually, I'll do that before the content loads. When I click on the link, I change my title. So this is change title, right? And then this is change URL, right? So this is something like, hey, history. I want to push state, and I want to change my data. My data is going to be nothing. We're not going to change the state right now. My unused is going to be an empty string. We can use that. And by the way, unused is for backwards compatibility. We don't use that part anymore. It's actually deprecated. One day they're going to change push state and pop state, so we don't have that middle property required. For now, it's there. And then the URL is what we want to do. If I go something like, slash plus the document title, right? So I can do that. So that way, whatever the document title is, I'm going to make the URL appear to be the exact same thing. That's what this history does itself. Let's see if it works. Back to this. So again, I can't do it for the first time yet because I haven't done that. But if I click home, all of a sudden it goes home like this. Look, right? And same thing with about and our projects and our services and our contact. Notice that? We do get this hashtag, okay? And the hashtag stays there because, well, we've clicked on something and that's the hashtag that we've clicked on. All right. But just to let you know, that is what this did. This changed our title to whatever it is. So we want to do this change, the title change thing, this thing here as well. We want to do that here. So as soon as we change the document title, we want to say that the title, right, initially is like this. So we want to say that it is whatever the document title is. In this case, it's home. So let's just put in home. Okay. And if I go back and I refresh, right, you can see that by default, it says home. But if I click on any one of these things, it's going to show about and hashtag. Okay. So getting there, we're getting there. How come the hashtag is added, my friends? How come? Well, we know that if I go back to my components and I look at my header, that the href value here has a hashtag onto it. What if I made the href value empty? Would this cause a problem? So I have nothing in here, and I want to definitely not have anything there. What happens if I have my href tag that does have nothing in there? What does it do now? So if I save and I go back, does that crap something out? So home, right? And then it says home, and about is about, but then it goes back to home, and then our projects goes back to home, and our services goes back to home. That's a problem, right? It's a big problem, right? Because what's happening is, because we don't have an href in there, it just resets the page. And that's what that hashtag does. The hashtag goes through and makes it so that the link is clickable. Now remember that these are anchor tags, and anchor tags have an href. But what if we made them buttons instead? So what if I said something like, okay, these are all buttons. What if I made the first one a button? What does that look like? Just to give you this idea, right? So here's my button. And if I went back, it's just like this big ass button here, which is not good, right? But the idea is that now if I click there, it doesn't, let's just do another one. Let's do another button for a second. Button, right? It doesn't even do anything because, you know, these things, these href things don't mean anything when it comes to the button context, okay? So I want to be able to do an anchor tag like so. I want to be able to do an anchor tag. So this should be anchor, or there we go. I want to do the anchor tag, and I want to click on the link, right? But when I click the href tag, it can't be empty. It can't be empty. It's like I want to put an href tag of /home or whatever it's going to be, and it's going to interpret this thing, whatever the href tag is. Instead of me actually doing something like actually navigating, I want to prevent default behavior, and I want to capture what it's going to be altogether. Let's put it back to the hashtag for a second. Man. What? Man, I'm gonna. It's my keyboard. All right. So I want to prevent default behavior. So how do I do such a thing? I know, right? When I go to my app.ts, right, and I'm clicking on these links. So when I click on any one of these links up here. So again, if you look at load header, I have this area like on click, right, on click. Well, I want to prevent the default behavior from here altogether. So let's go E, right, here's E for my event. And I want to say here, I want to say event.prevent default. That's what I want. Now you might get this struck out that says something like deprecated. Don't worry about that right now. Okay, I want to prevent the default behavior from this thing. So when I click onto it, it's not going to actually go anywhere. All right, let's see if that works. So, okay, so going back to this, it looks like a link, but when I click onto it, it doesn't really go anywhere. And now it changes everything to the way it's supposed to look. There it is. Make sense? Can't do this one because that doesn't do anything right now. But makes sense. So this prevent default behavior prevents it from actually being a link. It doesn't go anywhere, but it looks like a link, right? And so that it looks pretty good. Okay, very nice, very nice. I want to now start thinking about that whole idea about the active link. I want to be able to do that, the active link. So I load my content as an example, and I know I load my content and it's after I have my links. So therefore, not only can I do this, but I can also change my active link to be what I want it to be. Remember how I had that before, where I want my active link to add a class. So again, what I can say is, depending on where I'm at, right? And depending on my document title, I want to make it lowercase now, right? That's what I want. I want to lowercase my document title, right? And well, this gives me what this is, right? And I want to target my ID. Okay, I want to target my ID. So going back to this, so here's something. We've made a lot of work to do this. But if I go back to my header, notice my home, about, project, services, and contact. Well, now they're lowercase and I got to make them uppercase. Oh man, let's just make everything uppercase in the first place. So now again, iteration. Remember we talked about this? Iteration, because now we know that my ID is going to turn into my title. Instead of me manually doing it with my code, my little fingers, which I did here, right? I did this whole thing where we changed the title to uppercase, right? That's what we did. We said document.title is equal to whatever my title is, and then we made it uppercase. Well, we don't have to do this anymore. We can simply just get rid of all this, because we don't care about making it uppercase because my ID is uppercase, right? Then therefore I can just do it in one fell swoop. Again, we're just iterating and we're making it better, right? So now that my document title is uppercase, just from my document, that's what that just came from my header.html just became uppercase. And because I did it there, then instantly I don't have to do any of that fancy footwork to get the thing uppercase, right? And that means down in here, it's the same thing. My document title is home, and I can still push date. This is good. And look, it looks like it's push date home, lowercase h. And I want to do home, uppercase h here as well. But now that I've changed my title here, then this way I can check to see what my title is. And whatever my title is, I can search for the anchor tag that contains a property that is my class, that I can add a class to it. So I can say something like, okay, cool. And I don't have to do it here. I mean, because again, it depends on the title. I don't have to do a switch case anymore, right? Because the title is my switch case. My title switches everything for me. So depending on my title, that is the thing that I'm going to be looking for. Okay, so before I load my content, how does that look? Let's make the, activate the current link. So how do I do that? Remember, I want to search for all anchor tags that are inside of list items, right? And I want to get the props, right? I want to add class. I want to also, search for the ID that has an ID of, that has an ID of plus document.title, right? Because I can make this query, it's just a string. So I'm compiling this string together. So I'm looking for anchor tags that have an ID of document title that are inside of list items. Awesome. And then what I can say is add a class to that, right? Which is active, right? And by the way, what do I want to add a class to, right? I'm just adding a class to the current class already. And so because my header already has a class called nav link, I'm just adding a class to this. Okay, this is a problem. And we're going to talk about this in a second. Remember, the page doesn't reload anymore. Okay, the page doesn't reload. So if I go back and if I go to home, it lights up. If I go to about, it lights up. Our projects, that lights up. Our services, that lights up. And our contact, that lights up. They all light up now because, well, I added a class to each one of them when I clicked it. My page isn't reloading. If I reload my page, right, it's going to give me this, right? And nothing is lit up. So I'm on the right track. I want to do this, right, when I'm loading my header, but it's like I want to get rid of all the classes. I want to remove the class by default. That is the active class. So when I load this up, I want to iterate through each object for every list item, right? As an example, that when I click on a list item, I want to loop through all list items and remove. I want to remove this. And also, guess what else? I want to remove all the clicks links, because every time I go and click again, I'm adding a new one and a new one and a new one of these. And I don't want to do this every single time. Wow. Okay. That's pretty terrible. So it's like when I click onto this thing, I want to disable everything. So I want to say something like, okay, LIA. So I want to turn off any click events. Starting off, I want to turn off all click events. And this is like remove event listener. And I need to remove the event listener because every time we add an event listener, it adds memory to our application. My application gets slower and slower and slower because I'm going to keep on adding new listeners every single time. All right, let's see if this works just by itself first. Hold on. We're formulating. Going back. So again, I go back, I remove listeners, and I'm good. So this still works. Nice. And one thing to look at is this. All right, so make sure you take a look at your console to make sure there's no errors here. Right, that removes all listeners, and we're good to go. Next. Now that we've removed all listeners, I also want to remove all links that have, I want to loop through all links that have an anchor tag in them. And I'm going to remove all classes at the beginning that have this. So I want to do one of these. Let's just put a semicolon here. And I could do it like for all objects, right? For all objects, right, that have this, I want to go to their, and this is for each one of them, and I want to remove the active class. Okay, so I want to do that by you running a little each. So again, for all list items that have an anchor tag in them, for each one of these things, right, I want to run a little function. Again, making it work. Remember, making it work, then refactor. I want to loop through each one of them, and I want to remove my class. So I want to say something like, let's look at this and remove class active. So if it existed, it will be removed. So this takes away the active class, removes the active class from the list item. Okay, from each list item first. So we remove everything. This one removes the listener, right? So we do some cleanup. This is the cleanup section. So this is kind of like our, oops, reset all the links. All right, that's what this does from here on down. It resets everything. And then after I reset all the links, because I turn off the listener, I loop through each one and remove the active class because we want to do that, right? Then when someone clicks onto it, right, as an example, when someone clicks onto it, then and only then do we want to do all this. But then you got to think about this, right? I want to turn off all the links, all the click links, right? And I'm never reloading the page anyway, so that this, if I'm never going to go back here, I'm not going to I only call load header once. And so therefore I don't have to do this part. Again, we're just iterating. I do want to do this, but I don't want to do it once. I want to do it whenever I click on a link. I want to remove all active classes. So I don't want to do it here. I want to do it when I'm clicking on a link. So in here. So again, before I add the class, I want to remove them here. So first remove everything, then add the new one. All right, that's what this is doing, okay? And I want to do that in here because this way I know that I've clicked on something. When I click on it, I'm going to load my new content. I'm going to remove my classes. And I'm going to make everything the way it's supposed to go. Phew, right? Iteration, 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 right? As we're thinking, almost like baking a cake, like we talked about before. I can pass. Yes, I'm here. So all I'm doing is, I'm hoping you're getting my my thinking as much as possible. Again, I might not be thinking like you're thinking, but I want you to start thinking seeing my thinking process. I'm going through and I'm going, okay, I'm clicking on this. This is an event. This event is going to be something that is constantly being, I'm listening for something that's clicking, anything that clicks. Well, if I click on a list item, I want to prevent its default behavior. So I don't want to actually do the link, right? I want to get a reference to the title. I want to change the title based on what I'm clicking, all right? And then I want to change the URL so it looks like what it's supposed to look like when I'm clicking onto it. Awesome, right? And then I want to loop through each of the list items, the anchor tags that are in the list items for each one, and remove all the active classes. And then I'm going to put back the one that is related to the title that I'm on, okay, without doing any switch case. Switch cases are bad, okay? Can I continue now, Sarah? Or is that pausing enough? Okay, maybe not. Any other questions, guys? Or when you're looking at this, or you're like, you know, am I growing two horns out of my head? Like, in other words, am I being terrible to you, right? I'm just trying to get you guys to think about, you know, when we're coding, two things: the asynchronous nature of JavaScript, which is number one. So are you good? I can continue now. And the other part is, you know, when we're starting to think about, you know, how we're coding, I'm introducing jQuery, and you've never seen jQuery until this semester, right? So this is all new. I could code all of this with vanilla JavaScript, absolutely. And maybe one day we'll go back and turn it back into that, right, as an example. But eventually we won't even need any of this stuff because React is going to do it all for us, right? And then you're going to get really mad at me because you're going to say, why don't we just start from React from the first place? And I'm going to say, well, you probably wouldn't know what's going on here. Now you know exactly what's going on with React. And this is where I want to get you guys to. I want to get you guys to an understanding in the second half of semester where you're like, I get this is what's happening, right? I agree, Andre. All right, so why is it so messy and unstructured? It looks messy and unstructured, but actually I'm making it structured. It's asynchronous. And once you think about it asynchronous, then it seems messy, but it's actually not. It's just following a structure. In our mind, we have to think in a different way. That's all. All right, so let's test this out and see if we're good. So if we go back now, if I go home, about, our projects, our services, and contact, now everything works exactly the same way that it's supposed to. We don't get any errors in the console. The only issue is that inside of our start, that is not happening the way it's supposed to, because we need to make the home page active. We need to make the home page active, which is just doing this part right here. Okay. Now I'm just front loading this so you can see what's happening here. Okay, so you can see all the little things that we're doing. That is what's happening, right? So this is, I'm just going to be very specific here and say home, right? This is all the initial load. So this is the initial load for the home page. I need to load the initial content because our content, we haven't clicked on anything. So I have to load the home's content first. This is kind of a load homepage, you know, kind of little thing that we have here. All right, good. Save and go back. And now we have our home page, but our home page isn't active, even though the home is the way it is, right? We want to say that our home link is active. So for every list item, it says that has a home link. Well, how come this can't work? Well, that's because we don't even have a list item yet. We don't even have a content, what we call a header yet, because of the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. So we can't put that here. In fact, instead of doing this, we need to do that inside of load header. So in load header, as soon as we finish loading the header, the first thing we do before we click on anything is make it so that we do this. We make the home page active for the first time, right? Activate the home link initially on initial load. Okay. There it is. Now we can go back and we see we have pretty good structure for our application. And this, my friends, is where we want to take you today when it comes to this kind of stuff. Okay. This is our little first iteration or second iteration of our thing. Now, content, is there some way of making this better, right? So we know our home is our content. We want to inject our content all the time. Load content is switches on title, right? And we want to take that home and we want to switch it in there. So whatever the document title is, we want to load it up, right? And we want to do that every single time we call load content. Do I really need a switch case? Well, what if I told you we don't, right? What if I told you I can take this, right? Cut it, kill all of this, right? And do something like this, where I can say that we want to get, instead of a home, I want to get what the document title is. So we'll call this the content link. So let's content link equal to my documents dot title, right? To lowercase, right? To lowercase, which returns my document title back to the lowercase, way of doing things. And this content link, instead of me doing this, I can say something like content plus, right? Content link plus HTML. So now, instead of us having to load content, right, where we do a switch cases are bad, right? We want to just do something that looks like this. And then we can actually put it so that it looks normal now again. Right? Because otherwise we're doing things, well, over and over again the same way. We're duplicating, right? Shouldn't this work the exact same way? When I go to my load content, I go to my content link. Depending on what my document title is, I convert it to lowercase. I add it on to the path, which is views, content, let's say home, add in .html, and that's the file that I'm loading. And I'm going to inject that data inside of main. Okay, so that's kind of a way of doing it. Save. And now again, you can see that's exactly the same, right, with a lot less code. Okay. Again, no, by no means are we perfect at this point. By no means, right? However, we're way miles better than what we were before. So load header, let's do a little bit of documenting. We'll say that this method loads the header and the page contents, right? That's what it does. This method injects the page content. Okay, that's what it does. This method loads and injects the page content, the footer content. Okay. So a little bit of code, a little bit of documentation, not much. Okay. But that is our second iteration of our single page application. So again, we're going to clear git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say second, or we'll say single page application version 2. Git push. Git push. Okay. Questions around this that we've done so far? let's add one more thing, to my page. Lena's asking, is in assignment 1, should we use all this too? The answer is you don't have to, okay? The only thing I need for assignment 1 is that you use string variables to inject your content onto the page. Could you use this in assignment 1? Yes, you could. Now, let's put this up on GitHub pages. And this is the last thing we're going to do for today, okay? And talk about how this can work. So what are GitHub pages? If I go to GitHub pages, GitHub pages are built into all GitHub repositories. That's what they are. And what they do is you can set up your GitHub pages for every project that you have, okay? You can also set up GitHub pages just for your entire, your account. It can be also one big GitHub page. For example, if you wanted a portfolio site for your account, what you could set up is your portfolio site could be your name, your account name as an example. Okay, so where do we do this? And this is free hosting, so we don't have to pay anything to do this. How do I do this and how is it done? Well, a couple things to note, right? We have a repository already, and the repository has an index.html. The index.html is going to load, and what I want to do with it is I want to make sure that I can access my node modules. We need one little piece of, or a little file for us to use before we continue. And I want to call this no Jekyll. So let's show you what that looks like. It's the no Jekyll file, no Jekyll. So no Jekyll is what we need to do for GitHub pages, because we want to use a node modules, right? We want to bypass everything for GitHub pages, so we can use something called no Jekyll. Okay, so we're going to copy this no Jekyll. I'm going to put it in the chat for you guys so you guys can see it. Here it is, no Jekyll. And what I want to do, sorry, go back to this, is actually add it into the root of my folder. So no Jekyll. It's an empty file, literally just sits there like this, no Jekyll. Okay. And what I also want to do is I want to bring back node modules, because node modules are required for my app to work, and GitHub pages doesn't inject node modules and doesn't load this for you, unfortunately. So what we got to do is in our .gitignore, we need to remove .node modules, right? And press save. Okay, we need to bring node modules back. Okay, so our .gitignore right now is empty for now. Okay, we're going to come back to this. And then we're going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added node modules back into the repository, and then git push. And the reason why I'm doing this is because without node modules, we won't have Bootstrap, we won't have jQuery, we won't have any of that stuff. But the no Jekyll file, what it does is, if I go back up to GitHub right now, let's go back up to GitHub. So if I go back to GitHub, if I refresh, you're going to see that I have this no Jekyll file, right? That's what I have. And I have my node modules folder right here now. There it is. Now, this is how you do it. You need to make, for in-class exercise for this week, please make it public for the first time, okay? Public in-class exercise. I want you to go to settings, right? Again, this is being recorded, so you have access to this. I want to go to settings, and on the left for your repository, there is a pages option. Here's the pages option. Click on pages, right? And notice it says on the right when I did that. So again, repository, let's say this is your in-class exercise 4, right? I went to settings and I went to pages, okay? And down in here where it says your branch, right? Then I could select main. If I select the main branch and click save, it's going to generate a brand new site for me, okay? Let's see if it works. Let's see what happens. When you click on this, things are happening in the background, okay? If I go back to my repository, I'm gonna see this orange dot here, right here, next to the top of my repository. This orange dot is indicating that something is happening on the, we're actually building something. This little orange dot right here. If I refresh again, you're going to see that I have something called environments that has been added to my repository, right? And you can see that it says it's queued. Queued means it's working on it, okay? And if I refresh again after a time, you'll see that it says in progress, right? And if I give it some time, and if I refresh again, it's going to say active. And when it says active, if I click on this little link here, right, and it'll take me to this other page, and there's a place called view deployment. And if I click on view deployment, it'll show you my page. Now, if it was working properly, it would appear here, right? But it is not. And let's talk about why. All right, so let's look at it and inspect. Let's do a Control-Shift-J and see what's going on. It says a couple things. It says bootstrap.found. And it says failed to load resources. It's trying to load something and it doesn't find everything. And without this, Bootstrap's not loading. And without Bootstrap, everything is failing. Okay. So there's two parts to this. One, right, it doesn't know where to find node modules. So going back to my index.html, notice that we're saying / node modules. So unfortunately, it's not telling us the link for this. So it's kind of, if you hover over and I click onto it, you know, it doesn't really tell us much. It just says Bootstrap's not found. Okay. And it's going here. It's going to like right to the end. So, that's weird. So what if I went, instead of / node modules, let's try /, right, for all this stuff. By the way, you're going to see that this may not work, right? Because we want to add in, we're not getting any content because it's crapping out because there's no node modules. And just make sure that that's cool. There you go. Okay. And I want to put this up on GitHub again because I made changes to my index.html. Clear git add dot git commit -m. Sorry, I might run a little bit overtime today, guys. Changed pathing of node modules. Git push. There we are. Now, when I go back to my deployment zone, you're going to see a little orange dot again, because now we're redeploying. Every time I go and push back up to GitHub now, it's going to redeploy, right? It's going to redeploy. Okay. And let's refresh. It's queued. Give it a second. By the way, if you ever want to watch the build process, if you click on this little dot, it'll show you what's happening here. It's showing you that it's being deployed right now. There's things that are happening in the background. This is this little dot that I'm clicking on right here. Some checks haven't completed, right? So again, refresh the page and you can see that it's now active, right? And if I go view deployment, we might still see this, Control-Shift-J. It's going to say, can't find it. jQuery, all this stuff. And it also can't find app.css and all.min.css and a bunch of other stuff, right? So, okay, we can deal with this. We can deal with this in a very simple way, right? If node modules is the way that it's a problem, right? If it can't find it because of this, because we're going to node modules or data or content or whatever views, why can't it? Right? Because node modules is clearly there, right? And if I look here in my code, did it go up on GitHub? Here's node modules. So it's going to go to node modules, and in node modules, it's going to go to Bootstrap, and it looks like it's there. So that's the most important part. Can I see it here up on my file? So it does exist. Here's where it does exist. Here's the Node.Jekyll file, because we need the Node.Jekyll file at all. Because if without the Node.Jekyll file, it's not going to work. Okay. So this is the one thing it won't happen. We can't depend on this happening at all without the Node.Jekyll file, right? So then what about my index.html? What does that look like? And you can see here that that is what it's finding, right? This is how it's happening, right? So what's the problem and what do I need to do, right? Because clearly this doesn't seem like it's working. But remember, always remember, your browser's caching. right? So, well, if my browser's caching and this is the link, what if I use another browser to check it with? Maybe if I use something like Firefox, or something like that, because I want to make sure that it's not my browser caching, it's the right thing to look at. So there it is. It says georgiancollege.github.io home. Oh man, right? Well, that's an issue right there. That's the problem. And the reason why this is not working is because it's going to your main site. What it really should be is comp la la la, but it redoes, it goes back to this. It changes. And there is no home link from here, right? Because it's trying to readjust and point to itself, right? It actually worked because look, if it's rejigging what this looks like, right? Then you can see that, by the way, Firefox gives you other kinds of information, right? So it says here, let's look at, sorry, I want to just look at the, let's inspect the page for a second. So here, I'm not getting any errors, but I'm not getting anything either, right? So this is something that's weird about Firefox. So Firefox doesn't work at all, right? With our little code. Why not? Why not, right? So that's the first thing. We got to figure out why it's not working, okay? Because it says app started, we got to this part, right? But we never got anywhere else, okay? How do I troubleshoot this problem? Because, we don't want to keep going here forever and we're running out of time, right? But this is the way you do GitHub pages, right? This is the way you do GitHub pages. So if I go back to this and let's do some checking. Inside of our scripts, we have our app.ts. Again, things to note. Did it transpile? And it looks like, well, it did because I've got all my load header information. We are transpiling because it's updating. We know it's transpiling because we also have this and all this kind of stuff, right? Here's our transpile, and there doesn't seem to be an error with our transpilation. So we always check the stuff that we're gonna to make sure it's reading the way it's supposed to read. How about locally? When I change this / stuff, when I went to my index and changed this to /, right? How come because it still worked locally. So if I go back to our page, so our local page, not our page on Firefox or our page on Chrome up online, but locally, does it still work? So if I refresh, yes, I can still see everything locally, but online, it doesn't seem to work at all, like 0. But it did remap everything. So let's see if we can get to some parts. When I go to load header, I want to say a little console log, loading header. Okay, that's what I want to do. When I go to load footer and load content, I want to say loading contents, console log, loading contents. Okay, this way I keep track of what's happening. And here's my footer, console log, loading footer, right? So I can see what's happening. Okay, so loading footer, loading contents, loading header. Those are the places that I load stuff. Okay. And if I go here, so if I go Control-Shift-J locally, right, I can see what's happening. Content, header, footer, right? And if I click about, it goes content. And if I click our projects, it goes content again, our services and everything. It's going to go content, content, content every single time because we're not going to ever load the header again, only one time. Cool. Excellent. Let's put this up on GitHub and see what happens online. Are we getting the same thing? So. Added some comments or some console commands. Not the best way of troubleshooting, by the way. Hit push, but it's a start. Okay, and just like before, we're going to go back up to the deployment zone, and we're just going to hide all of this. And I'm going to go here and let's see, is it deploying? okay? So it looks like it's building. No Jekyll is there, right? So Y and refresh. In progress. By the way, languages, GitHub detects that we're using 65% of our code is HTML. Is TypeScript, and the other part is HTML, which is pretty cool. Let's refresh again, and now we're a check mark, and we also have GitHub pages here. We can go here and view deployment, and then let's see what happens. Again, we don't see any content, but let's see what happens here. Control Shift J. We never even made it into the first part, which is our first piece. We never went there. It's like this stuff is on the home page. And take a look here, we didn't rewrite anything. Okay, but if I go back to here, which is our another browser like Firefox, well, we got to app started, but that's it. And we never, somehow we wrote home, but nothing else ever worked. Nothing else ever worked. Huh? Why? Why did this happen to us? Why are we having some problems? Well, failed to load resource. The server responded with the status of 404 for all of this. It's not finding it all, right? It's still having problems finding jQuery and all that stuff when we look and see if we can find node modules. And this is sometimes a glitch. So if I say something like no Jekyll not working or node modules, right? Then it says, how do I include node modules on the folder? And it talks about how to do that in here. And it just says add node Jekyll. That's what it says basically to do, right? It says node modules folder, Stack Overflow. It talks about how to do this. And it says create an empty .node Jekyll text file on the root of the GitHub pages branch. You can also refer to the announcement by GitHub, which talks about the update that is responsible for this behavior. And that was way back in 2017. Like before, when we put on this stuff, it didn't have a problem, but now it seems to be an issue. So if I go back to the announcement by GitHub, as an example, if it exists, it says, what's new in GitHub pages with Jekyll 3.3, and Jekyll 3.3 is their back end, stuff that they've been using. And now obviously it's not Jekyll 3.3.9, it's something else, but it's a problem with node modules. So we want to turn node Jekyll off, we need to do that. But here's the thing with it. I'm just going to put it out there to you guys, right? What if the node Jekyll, it's also a pathing thing, okay? What if our node Jekyll went up to GitHub pages after our the everything else we did? We haven't had node modules up up online for a long time. To isolate that problem and to say that it's not us, but it's actually GitHub pages, because GitHub pages act a little weird sometimes, right? Because it's free, right? What if we made another repository? So here, if I went here and I went to new, and I want to call this live site. So I want to say something like, COMP2112, fall 2022, live site. And I want to make it public. Okay, so a brand new site that has nothing on it for the very first time. What I want to do is make a copy of this stuff in my operating system. Bear with me for a second. So I want to go back to my operating system, make a brand new site called the same thing, COMP2112, F2022, live sites, okay? And this is probably what I would start. I would say, okay, I want to grab everything except for my .git folder. Okay, so copy all this, go back here, go to my live site, populate that in, right? So I have all that stuff like I had before, but now I don't have a .gitignore file that I'm going to put up. I'm going to remove my .gitignore file for a second. And I'm going to put this up, into a separate project altogether. And I know I'm going over time, guys. Please bear with me. And I'm recording this stuff for you. And maybe that's my problem. If it's not, for in-class exercise number 4, just have the stuff that I've talked about without the live site, Okay, and that'll be fine for everything that we're doing. Okay, so well, let's see if this fixes the problem. So here's my live site, and what I want to do is just like we've done before. I'm just going to go up to use this again, right? So I'm just going to grab I'm just to do this in Visual Studio Code. So this is kind of kill everything else. Good, good, good. I want to take away my .gitignore file just in case it sees an empty .gitignore file, which might, for some whatever reason, cause an issue. I don't think it will. There it is. So there it is. There's my node modules. We've never made a repository here for the first time. So let's just do it. So we'll say git init, git dot, git commit -m, initial commit, git push. Oh, we don't have a repository to push to. We're going to get that information from here. And we're going to go back here and right click and paste and push. And now we have a clean, repository with no previous mention of a gitignore file. And the .jekyll file, the no Jekyll file is right here. Okay. Back to this, refresh. Let's make this a GitHub Pages site. So I'm going to go back to settings, pages, and select main and save and let it do the building. Let's see if this works, kind of the way it is. And let's go back to the main thing. We can see here, we've got the little orange dot, which means that it's working, it's building. And if I refresh here, still is taking its time. It's working. I'm just being a little bit impatient because we're running out of time. In progress. And active. And let's see if this is any different. Okay, it's not, which is good. But I noticed something. Control Shift J, right? I did this. Aha. Oh, we got partial power captain, right? When we got here, right? We got to load content, load header, load footer, but now our views content home.html doesn't work. These are incorrect somehow. But that's okay. That's a pathing issue. All right, well, let's go back. Pathing issues we can fix. No Jekyll files we can't fix. So that means that if I go back to my code, scripts, and if I go down to app.ts, right, in my script, make sure you transpile again, Control-Shift-B, right? So we want to transpile here because I'm using the second repository, not the original one, right? And I want to make sure that I don't forget anything. So /views doesn't seem to work, but /views is relative, as an example, to my, it should be relative to my homepage. It should not be relative to my JavaScript page. Should not be relative to that, okay? So that's weird that it's not working, /views. Views components header, views components header .html. It's not finding that in there. It got to this point, but then it can't do this part. So my header.html seems not to be found somehow. And I'm wondering if I went to, if I do that, that's bad. If I did this /views, that can cause other issues. But let's try and see what that does. So save. And let's push this up again. So it's just a pathing issue. No. Maybe, actually. Maybe. But we can easily check that. You can check that out, Tyler. If you remove the push state of your path, then it should work, right? So, and the other way to check it is what path is this going for? Like, what is this path? It says views, it's look what it's looking at, /views content home.html, right? So that is clearly not good because it's going on views and not on, well, where I'm going to, right? So I could specify, I could be really specific, but that is the actual path. You actually hook, it's going to the wrong path. And I'm wondering if it's still going to be an issue. But we're very close. We're very, very close. Did I push? Yes. Definitely not right. Let's go back to check it with Firefox. And again, I always check it with Firefox because I find that if I do so, then live sites. Then I can detect what the problem is better because I know it's not a caching issue. And here I don't even get any errors. Like in Firefox, poor Firefox. That's why I like Chrome a little bit better. It doesn't even give me errors at all. It's just everything is good, right? But I'm getting no content, right? So clearly it's not a caching issue, because if it was, then we get that problem, right? Where it says, I'm going to home and I don't want to go there. I want to go to, like we said before, live site, and it doesn't know what these things are, right? But if I was to go to try it out, if I said something like views, try it yourself, typing it by yourself, components, footer.html, if I did that, you can see that we would go directly to that and it wouldn't be an issue because, well, let's undo that change. I meant, can't be here, it's got to be COMP2112, F2022, live sites, /views, /views, /components, let's do a header.html. And then we're good, right? So that is, we know it exists. It's just a matter of pathing, right? So that is the only thing that we have to worry about right now. And I think what I want to do here is leave it there. I'll have a solution for you next week. Now, on that, so for in-class exercise 4, for this one this week, follow along, get your single page application working locally. That's what I want you guys to do. And then the next time we get together, I'll make it work remotely on GitHub pages. I'll figure out this problem. This is a new thing. And then we'll go from there. But let's go back and do a little bit of admin before you take off for the day. So here's some admin. Next week, there's no official lecture on Monday. We're not going to be here together. And so we're missing a whole time together. And then the following week when we get together, where we're physically in person, you know, there's supposed to be a midterm test practical that I'm going to be giving you, right? However, what I'm going to do with that midterm test practical is I'm going to make it so that I give it to you at the beginning of the week and you have until the end of the week to get it done. So I'm not going to get it done where you have to do it while I'm watching you. I'm not going to be there. We're not going to do that way. And I plan to be not physically there that week because we didn't need it. But I think at this point, looking at how we're going, I'm going to appear on week 7. I'm going to come to the school on week 7 as well, since you're supposed to be there anyway. And what we'll do is I will go through the single page application problems and everything else. Also talk about things for assignment 1, give you guys feedback for assignment 1. Remember, assignment 1 does not need to be a single page application. It can just be a regular 5-page site with repeating code. I'm okay with that right now. I just want to see what you can do in terms of how beautiful you can make everything, okay? That's what I want you guys to do. So when we come back from break, which is back from Thanksgiving, which is week 7, I will give you your midterm test. You'll have until the end of the week to get it done, but I'll also do a bit of a lecture and feedback for your assignment 1. Okay. Any questions around anything we talked about today? All right, guys, I know there's a lot. As always, please connect with me via Discord or send me an email if you have issues. And Karen, can you stick around for 1 sec before we go? Okay. Thanks, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Enjoy it, and we'll talk soon. Tyler says, so do we need these components for the content on this assignment? No, you don't. Again, you can use just a 5-page site, Tyler. That is a standard 5-page site where you have repeating code, like, main nav as an example for each one of them. Okay. That's okay. Is it possible to do an appointment? Yes, we can do that. Right. And for Elena, what is your time frame for an appointment? Maybe my best day right now is Wednesday afternoon. Do you have time Wednesday afternoon after around I think it's 2 p.m. Yeah, that's all it needs to be. Tyler, you don't need anything else other than that. Correct. Thanks, Sarah. Take care. Thank you. Yes. Okay. So Elena, let's book some time around 2 o'clock. Send me an email. And then what I'll do is I'll send you a link. We'll get together on Discord. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. And Karen, stick around. Don't go away. I need you. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. All right. It's just you and me, Karen. Are you doing okay? You can come on the mic if you want.